I caught my husband cheating. Most people find out about an affair by seeing messages on their partner's phone, but I actually saw it happen with my own eyes, and it was in a public place where anyone could have seen. I'd always been a little suspicious, but I never expected to catch him like that. My name is Christina. I'm a stay-at-home mom with a 6-year-old son. The day it happened, my husband was supposed to be off work, and we'd planned a family outing, but when I woke up, he was already gone. He'd left a message saying he was going to take care of his sister, who had a fever, and would be back in the evening. I sighed in frustration. Our son had been excited to go to the amusement park, and this was supposed to be a rare day for us to spend together. My husband had been busy with a big project for 6 months without any breaks, so I'd been really looking forward to this. It also struck me as strange. His sister had a fiancé who could care for her, so why did he have to go? My husband has always been very attached to his sister. In fact, he once told me he started dating me because I looked like her. While that may have been a compliment, it also made me uncomfortable. I met his sister once. She's kind and beautiful, but I still felt weird about him comparing me to her. Before we had our son, my husband used to talk about wanting both a boy and a girl and often initiated intimacy, but after our son was born, he stopped being affectionate, and our intimacy disappeared completely, given how much he used to enjoy it. I wondered if he was finding that connection somewhere else. Still, what bothers me even more is how he disappears on his days off. Like today, he rarely spends time with our child, even though our son adores him. It breaks my heart when my son cries because his dad isn't around. My husband doesn't even attend his school events or prepare birthday gifts. Even on the rare days he comes home early, he just locks himself in his room to play video games and avoids spending time with us. I thought maybe he was working hard on his project, but I recently found out that wasn't true either. I asked an old friend who works at the same company if my husband was actually busy. They laughed and told me he's known as a windowside employee, someone who has little to do and leaves on time every day. I knew something was off. My husband kept claiming he was busy with a big project, but his salary hadn't gone up. It was still around $1,500 a month. Plus, he didn't look tired at all. Instead, he seemed relaxed, which only made me more suspicious that he might be cheating. While I was feeling frustrated, I made breakfast. Then I realized something strange. My son, who's always up by 7 a.m., on his own, was still asleep, and it was getting late. If he didn't hurry, he'd miss the school bus, so I went to his room to wake him. He didn't respond, just let out a groan of pain. Worried, I touched his forehead. It was burning hot. When I shook his shoulder gently, he barely opened his eyes and whispered, "Mom, I can't breathe." My heart sank. There'd been a disease outbreak at his nursery school, and I was terrified that he might be infected. Some kids had even died from it. I tried to call my husband in a panic, but he didn't answer. I sent him a message and then called my mom, who's a nurse, for advice on what to do. Following her instructions, I quickly made an ice pillow for him and checked his temperature. It was over 102 degrees Fahrenheit. I called an ambulance right away and kept him drinking water as we waited. Because of the infection risk, I couldn't ride in the ambulance, so I took a taxi to the hospital where they'd be taking him. I kept calling my husband along the way, hoping he'd answer, but he didn't. I left him an online message, praying he'd see it and come to the hospital. At the hospital, I waited anxiously outside the emergency treatment room, praying that my son would be okay. Years ago, my dad had gone into an emergency room and never made it out, so I couldn't help fearing the worst. My mom arrived to support me and kept reassuring me, saying, "It'll be okay, it'll be okay." An hour later, my son was stable, but the doctors said he needed to stay in the hospital for a week to recover fully. They moved him to a room, and I spent the night at the hospital, though my husband never showed up. The next day, I went home to pack clothes for my son and decided to bring him some fruit as a get-well gift. I also planned to thank the doctor who had helped us, so I passed by the emergency area. Suddenly, there was a commotion as paramedics brought in 2 people on stretchers, mostly covered by thin blankets. From the looks of it, they were a couple who had gotten stuck together during intimacy. Feeling awkward, I tried to avoid looking and started to leave, but then I made eye contact with the man and froze. It was my husband. "What are you doing here?" I blurted out in shock. He stammered, I caught my sister's cold, and, I was speechless. Why was my husband here, naked, and with another woman right after our son had been hospitalized? My head was spinning with questions. Then, as I looked at the woman he was with, I felt a surge of anger. I recognized her. It was his sister, Brenna. Time seemed to slow down as it all sank in. I'd suspected he was lying when he said he was taking care of his sister, but I never imagined this. Even if he had come to visit our son, there was no reason he'd show up in this condition, and with his own sister. It was beyond belief. Since they were on stretchers and being taken for treatment, I had to hold back my urge to confront them and wait until later. They couldn't avoid facing me forever, so I decided to confront them later. With a sick feeling in my chest, I went back to my son's hospital room to be with him and sort through my feelings. After a while, I checked my phone and saw tons of messages from my husband. As I expected, he was trying to cover up the situation, but he didn't mention our son or ask about his health at all. I ignored his messages and stayed focused on my son. An hour later, the doctor who had treated my son came in and smiled. "Your son is very healthy and recovering quickly," he said. "His fever's down, and his condition is stable. We thought he might have an infection, but it turned out to be heat stroke along with a cold. Giving him water was the right thing to do. You're a smart mom, he's lucky to have you." I thanked the doctor, feeling grateful for my mom's advice. I thought about buying her a nice gift later to show my appreciation, but, as relieved as I felt about my son's recovery, I could feel anger boiling up inside me, thinking about my husband. Apparently, my anger showed on my face, because my son looked at me and said, "Mama, your face looks scary." I forced a smile and reassured him, saying I'd be back soon. Once I left the hospital, I called my husband, who had left over 100 missed calls. The moment he picked up, he started rambling with excuses, saying, "It's not what it looked like, there's a reason," and kept going. I felt disgusted. Shouldn't he have been more concerned about our son instead of making excuses? The fact that he could do something like this with his own sister, while ignoring our child's needs, made me worry about our son's future. I realized he'd never change, so I decided right then to divorce him. It might be hard, but I could manage it for my son's sake. "So, you were busy with that while our son was suffering, huh? You probably did this every chance you got, and with your own sister. That's just disgusting," I told him bluntly. He had no words. I continued, "Oh, and by the way, I've already told your parents, but don't worry, I won't tell your company. I'd rather you keep your job so you can pay alimony and child support. Goodbye." 3 days later, my son was fully recovered, and we finally returned home together. Of course, my husband wasn't there. After that incident, he tried to apologize in person, but I handed him the divorce papers I'd already signed. He begged me to forgive him, insisting it was his first mistake and that I was all he had. I replied coldly, "You're still lying. I already know everything, your sister told me everything." I knew he'd resist the divorce, so I approached his sister first. I casually congratulated her on her upcoming wedding, then added, "I came up with a great story to share with everyone. Want to hear it?" Panicked, she pleaded with me not to tell anyone, saying it would ruin her life. I pretended to consider it. "Fine, I'll keep quiet, but only if you tell me exactly how many times you were with my husband." Without hesitation, she confessed everything. When I told my husband, he fainted from the shock of his sister's betrayal. After he recovered, he finally signed the divorce papers and left with a heavy heart. I proceeded through a lawyer to secure full custody of our son, along with alimony and child support. My husband initially argued over the amount, but when I leaned in and whispered, "Want me to let everyone know what happened?" he quickly agreed to pay. A month later, he was fired from his job after his company somehow found out. Now, he works at a food factory, putting strawberries on cakes to pay alimony and child support. Even there, the rumors about him spread, and young workers gossip about him constantly. As for his sister, despite my silence, the truth came out, and her engagement was called off. Her ex-fiancé, who suspected she was cheating, had hired a private investigator. Furious, he demanded a large amount in compensation, and now she works at a nightclub to pay him back. Recently, her ex-fiancé even gave me a photo of her and my husband in the act, saying, "Use it if you ever need to." I tucked it away in case my husband tries to cause any more trouble. I've since moved back to my parents' house to start fresh, raising my son with their help. They're thrilled to finally spend time with their grandson after living so far away for so long. My parents offered to help me as much as possible, though I don't want to rely on them too much. I'll lean on them only when I truly need to. By the way, my son has been perfectly healthy since that high fever, like it never even happened. He's been awarded perfect attendance for 3 years now. He seems to have completely forgotten about his biological father and enjoys life every day, which makes me happier than anything. Oh, and our family has grown. Angel, our white cat, is now peacefully sleeping on my lap. Before we moved, Angel often came to play in my yard. When I went to say goodbye, he jumped onto my lap and stayed there, like he wanted to come along. I was sad to leave him, so I brought him with me to my parents' house. Now, he's close with my parents, and he's become just as important to me as my son. Now, I look forward to watching my son grow up, surrounded by love from my parents and Angel. Sitting here on the porch, stroking Angel, I feel peaceful and hopeful for the future.
My name is Lauren, and I grew up in a small house that always smelled like fresh bread. My dad took over the family bakery from his parents, and I loved helping him knead dough after school. My mom was different. She was a realtor, always dressed in fancy suits and high heels, and she earned more money than Dad. One evening, when I was 12, Mom called, "Lauren, come set the table." I was skinny and awkward back then, more interested in reading than anything else. "Coming," I shouted, folding down the corner of my page. As I set out the plates, I could hear them starting up again. "Another slow month, Tyler," Mom said, sounding frustrated. "When are you going to get it together?" Dad's voice was quiet. "Please, Joyce, not in front of Lauren." "Oh, who cares?" Mom snapped. She should know what a failure her father is. I gripped the edge of the table, trying not to cry. This kind of scene happened a lot in our house, Mom putting Dad down and Dad trying to keep things calm. I knew it wasn't just about money. Mom felt trapped in a life she didn't want. "Lauren," Mom barked. "Where's my wine?" I rushed to pour her a glass, but my hands were shaking, and some wine spilled on the tablecloth. Mom's eyes narrowed. "You useless girl, can't you do anything right?" Dad stepped in. "It's just a little wine, Joyce, no big deal." Mom glared at him. "You're too soft on her. No wonder she's growing up to be as pathetic as you." I ran to my room, burying my face in my pillow. I loved Dad so much, but I couldn't understand why he put up with how Mom treated him. As for me, I learned to stay out of the way, to be quiet and unnoticed. The next morning, I woke up to a strange silence. No smell of baking bread, no sound of Mom's heels. I crept downstairs and found Dad sitting at the kitchen table, looking pale. "Where's Mom?" I asked, but deep down, I already knew. Dad handed me a note in her neat handwriting. It read, "Tyler, I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving with Larry. He can give me the life I want. All this small-town nonsense isn't for me, Lauren. Don't bother looking for me. You're just dead weight. Tyler, you're a loser, and you've made our daughter one too. Goodbye and good riddance." I stared at the note, feeling like I'd been hit in the stomach. Mom was gone. She had left us, calling Dad a loser and me useless as her parting words. The next few months were a blur of court stuff and emotional chaos. Dad filed for divorce and asked to have Mom's parental rights taken away. I remember sitting in the cold courthouse, holding Dad's sweaty hand as we waited for Mom. She never showed up. I drifted off while the adults talked, catching bits like abandonment and unfit parent. When it was over, Dad squeezed my hand. "It's done, Lauren," he said softly. "The divorce is final, and your mother's parental rights are gone. It's just you and me now." I nodded, feeling both relieved and sad. Life got tougher after that. Dad threw himself into work, spending long hours at the bakery. Even though I was only 14, I started taking care of most of the house. I'd come home from school, do my homework, and then start on dinner and laundry. For years passed like this. Just after I turned 16, everything changed again. Dad came home one day, looking shocked and sad. "Uncle Ryan died," he said, sinking into a kitchen chair. I hugged him tight. "I'm so sorry, Dad," I said. He hugged me back, then pulled away, his eyes wide. "Lauren, you won't believe this. He left me everything, almost $500,000. I'm his only relative. I don't even know what to do with all of it." But Dad figured it out fast. He used part of the money to improve the bakery, upgrading equipment, and expanding the menu. Within a few months, our little bakery was the talk of the town. Dad hired more people, kept the place open longer, and before we knew it, he was opening a second location across town. By the time I turned 17, Dad owned 3 successful bakeries, and we didn't have to worry about money anymore. I quit my after-school job to focus on my studies. We even took our first real vacation, a 3-week trip to Europe. As the years passed, Mom became a distant memory. Dad dated now and then, but he never seemed interested in marrying again. I didn't push it. We were happy as we were. High school graduation came and went in a rush of caps in the air and hugs. I had worked hard and it paid off. I was headed to State University to study finance. The morning I was about to leave, Dad handed me a small box. "What's this?" I opened the box and found a key inside. Dad smiled. "It's your graduation gift, an apartment near campus. No more worrying about dorms or rent." I stared at him, speechless. "Dad, I can't accept this. It's too much." He waved off my objections. "You earned it, Lauren. Now go make me proud." College flew by. I focused hard on my studies, determined to make the most of this chance Dad had given me. When I wasn't in class or studying, I was interning at local financial firms. By the time I graduated, I already had a job lined up as a junior financial analyst. On my first day at work, I stood in front of my apartment mirror, straightening my blazer. "You've got this, Lauren," I told my reflection. "Make Dad proud." The job was challenging, but I loved it. Every bonus or raise I earned, I saved and invested. Dad's advice echoed in my mind. "Money makes money, Lauren. Be smart with it." The years passed, and by the time I turned 34, my investments had paid off. I owned 3 more apartments in addition to the one I lived in, and they were bringing in steady rental income. Life was good. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Lauren," Dad's voice sounded strained. "Can you come over? I need to talk to you." When I arrived, I found him at the kitchen table, looking older than ever. "What's wrong, Dad?" I asked, feeling a tightness in my chest. He took a deep breath. "It's cancer, honey. Stage 4 pancreatic." The world seemed to shift. "No," I whispered. "This has to be a mistake." But it wasn't. The next year was a rough journey of treatments, ups and downs. I spent every free moment at the hospital or with Dad, making his favorite cheese soup, even when he was too sick to eat it. One crisp autumn day, I arrived to find him sitting in his favorite chair, looking serious. "We need to talk, Lauren," he said, patting the seat next to him. "The doctors say I've got 5 months, tops." I shook my head. "No, they're wrong. We'll get another opinion." He reached over, gently. "Lauren, it's okay. I've made peace with it. I'm selling the bakeries. Everything will go to you. You'll be set for life." I pulled away, wiping my eyes. "I don't want your money, Dad. I want you." He smiled softly. "I know, sweetheart, but this is my way of taking care of you, even when I'm gone." The next 6 months were both precious and painful. We talked more than ever about everything and nothing. I memorized every line of his face, the sound of his laugh, and the smell of sugar and flour that clung to him even now. Then, on a quiet Sunday morning, he was gone. The funeral was a blur. Afterward, I sat alone in Dad's empty house, holding his favorite apron tightly. The lawyer had already been by with the paperwork, and as Dad promised, he left everything to me. I used the money from the bakeries to buy 3 more apartments. It felt right, like I was building something lasting, just like Dad had. A year after Dad passed, I was finally finding my balance again. Work kept me busy, and managing my rental properties gave me a sense of purpose. I was settling into a new normal, or so I thought. Then I got a call that turned everything upside down. "Lauren, it's your mother. I'm back in town and I'd like to see you if you're willing." My mind raced. Part of me wanted to hang up, to stay away from the woman who'd abandoned us. But another part, the part that still held on to the little girl I once was, couldn't help but feel curious. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Let's meet at Don Jose's Mexican restaurant tomorrow at noon." The next day, I got to the cafe early, my stomach in knots. At exactly 11 o'clock, I saw her walk in. She looked older, of course, but still elegant. But she wasn't alone. A young girl, maybe 18, walked in behind her. Mom spotted me and hurried over. "Lauren, darling, you look wonderful. And this is Anna, your sister." I felt like I'd been hit. My sister? We sat down, and Mom began to tell her story. She explained how Larry, her lover, left her soon after Anna was born, how they struggled to make ends meet, and why she decided to come back to her hometown to start over. "I heard you have rental properties," she said, her voice full of hope. I was wondering if maybe she trailed off, but I knew what she was asking. I looked at Anna, who was staring at her hands, clearly uncomfortable. I thought about Dad and how he'd always taught me to be kind, even when it was hard. I thought about the scared little girl I used to be, wishing for her mom to come back. "Okay," I heard myself say. "I have an apartment that just opened up. You can stay there." Mom's face lit up. "Thank you, we'll pay rent, of course." I raised a hand. "No rent, just utilities for now." As we sorted out the details, I watched Anna. She looked so young, so out of place. I remembered being her age, feeling lost and alone after Mom left. "So, Anna," I said, trying to sound friendly, "are you a junior in high school?" She nodded and finally looked me in the eyes.
"Yeah."
It's weird starting at a new school for senior year. I felt a pang of sympathy. "I bet. Listen, if you ever need help with anything, school stuff or just someone to talk to, I'm here, okay?"
I said.
Anna gave me a small smile. "Thanks. That means a lot." As we left the cafe, Mom hugged me again. "You're an angel, Lauren. I know I have a lot to make up for, but I hope we can start fresh." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. That night, as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to get much more complicated. For better or worse, my mother was back in my life, and I had a sister. Only time would tell what that meant for all of us. The months after Mom and Anna returned were strange. Mom quickly found work as a realtor, sliding back into her old life as if she'd never left. Anna enrolled at the local high school for her senior year. I kept my distance, unsure how to handle this new family setup. Now and then, Mom would call or stop by. "Lauren, darling, thank you again for the apartment," she'd say, smiling warmly. "You've been such a blessing." I'd nod, feeling uncomfortable with her endless gratitude. "It's fine, Mom. I'm glad I could help." Anna and I slowly developed a cautious friendship. I'd help her with math homework or listen to her college plans. It was nice, in a way, having a sister, but there was always a barrier, the weight of all the years we missed. Then, Anna's graduation came around. I watched from the back as she accepted her diploma, and I saw Mom beaming with pride. For a moment, I let myself wonder what life might have been like if Mom had never left. The very next day, Mom showed up at my door, unannounced, her face red, her eyes blazing. "We need to talk," she snapped, pushing past me into the living room. I followed her, confused. "What's going on?" She spun around to face me. "Don't play dumb. I know about the apartments, Lauren. All 4 of them." My stomach dropped. How had she found out? "What about them?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "You've been hiding this from us," she shrieked. Living the high life while Anna and I scraped by. I felt my temper rising. "Excuse me? You're living rent-free in one of those apartments." "That's not enough," she spat. "Half of those properties should be mine. I'm your mother." I couldn't help it, I laughed. It was so ridiculous. "You can't be serious. You gave up any claim to my life and my things when you left us. Remember? No parental rights, no child support." Her tone suddenly softened. "Lauren, please think about Anna. She needs money for college. If you just sold one apartment." "Absolutely not," I cut her off. "Anna's education is not my responsibility." "How can you be so selfish?" she wailed. "After everything I've done for you." That was the last straw. "Everything you've done for me?" I stared at her, shocked. "Are you talking about abandoning me and calling me useless in your goodbye note? Or maybe you mean living rent-free in my apartment for months?" Mom flinched, as if I'd slapped her. For a moment, she just stood there, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then, without a word, she turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, shaking with anger and hurt. How could she? After everything, how could she try to guilt me like this? I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands. Deep down, I'd known letting Mom back into my life was risky. But I had hoped. Well, I wasn't sure what I'd hoped for. As my anger faded, a deep sadness took its place. This woman, who should have been my support and protector, was a stranger who only wanted to use me. And what about Anna? What was I going to do about her? 3 weeks after Mom's outburst, I was getting coffee at my usual spot when I noticed the barista giving me strange looks. As I waited for my order, I overheard a bit of conversation at a nearby table. Can you believe it? Charging her own mother rent when she has all those apartments. I froze, barely able to believe they were talking about me. But over the next few days, I caught more whispers, more side glances. It seemed Mom had been busy spreading her twisted version of the story to anyone who would listen. Then came the Twitter post. I saw it during my lunch break and almost choked on my sandwich. My daughter Lauren has 5 apartments she rents out, making a fortune, but she refuses to help with her sister's college. She's forcing me to pay outrageous rent when I can barely make ends meet. I'm heartbroken that my own child could be so greedy and selfish. The comments poured in, each one a knife to my heart. How could she do that to her own mother? What a horrible person. Friends, relatives, even old classmates I hadn't spoken to in years. All of them jumped on the bandwagon, shaming me for supposed greed. Not one of them seemed to remember or care that this was the same woman who abandoned me as a child. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, my boss called me into his office. "Lauren," he said, his face serious, "we need to talk about this situation with your mother. It's starting to affect the company's reputation." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Sir, I can explain." He held up a hand. "I'm not asking for details, but I need you to resolve this quietly and quickly. We can't have this kind of drama associated with our firm. Understand?" I nodded, feeling numb and unable to speak. Back at my desk, I saw an email about unpaid utilities for Mom's apartment.
Just great.
With shaky hands, I called her.
"What do you want?" she snapped.
I took a deep breath, trying to keep calm. "Mom, there are unpaid utility bills for your apartment. We agreed you'd cover those, remember?"
She scoffed.
"Oh, please. You're making so much money from those apartments. You can afford to pay a few bills." "That's not the point," I said, my patience wearing thin. "We had an agreement." "An agreement," she interrupted, her voice cold. "Like the agreement that you'd help your family? What good did that do us?" I sat there, phone in hand, feeling like my world was falling apart. I tried to be kind and generous, and this was my reward. With a heavy heart, I made an appointment with a lawyer. "Miss Stevens," the lawyer said, looking over my case, "you have every right to evict your mother. She has no lease, pays no rent, and you've given her plenty of notice." I nodded, feeling both relieved and nervous. "What do I need to do?" He handed me a document. "This is an official eviction notice. Serve it to her. If she doesn't comply, we can take legal action." With the paper in hand, I drove to Mom's apartment, my apartment really. My hands shook as I knocked on the door. Mom opened it, her face twisting in annoyance when she saw me. "Oh, it's you. Have you finally come to your senses about selling an apartment for Anna's college? Anna's already picked out her school. Tuition's due next month." My shock turned to anger. "Are you serious? After everything you've done, you're still making demands?" "Don't be so dramatic," she scoffed. "It's the least you can do for family." That was it. I handed her the eviction notice. "Here. You have 31 days to leave." Mom stared at the paper, her face going pale. Then, without warning, she exploded. "You ungrateful little brat," she screamed, her voice echoing through the apartment. "After everything I've done for you." I stood my ground. "Everything you've done? You mean abandoning me, spreading lies about me?" She lunged forward, raising her hand. I flinched, but she didn't hit me. Instead, she grabbed my shirt, spitting insults in my face. "You're nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing but a selfish, heartless." I managed to pull away, fumbling for my phone. That's it. I'm calling the police. Her eyes widened, but she kept shouting, her words growing more vicious. By the time the police arrived, I was shaking, tears streaming down my face. I showed the officers the eviction notice and explained the situation as calmly as I could. One officer turned to Mom. "Ma'am," he said, "I suggest you calm down and discuss this civilly with your daughter." Mom sneered. "Civilly? With her? She's trying to throw us out on the street." The other officer turned to me. "Miss Stevens, legally, this is a civil matter. We can't forcibly remove her without a court order. I'd suggest trying to work this out between yourselves or going to court if needed." I nodded, feeling defeated as the police left. Mom's smug look made my blood boil. "You won't do it," she taunted. "You don't have the guts to take your own mother to court." I stared at her, this woman who had given birth to me but had never truly been a mother. Something inside me hardened. "Watch me," I said, my voice steady. Before she could respond, I turned and walked away. As I reached my car, I heard the apartment door slam behind me. Driving home, I thought about what lay ahead. A court battle, more drama, more pain, but maybe also a chance to finally break free from her toxic hold. The day of the court hearing arrived, and I felt sick as I walked into the courtroom. I saw Mom and Anna on the other side. Mom's eyes were red and puffy, while Anna looked like she wanted to disappear. The hearing began, and Mom put on quite a show. She cried, her voice breaking as she spoke to the judge. "Your Honor," she sobbed, "my daughter has turned so cold-hearted. She's trying to throw her own mother and sister out on the streets after everything I've done for her." I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. Then my lawyer stood up, and I felt a wave of relief. "Your Honor," he began, his voice steady, "I'd like to present some evidence that tells a very different story." He laid out the facts. Mom's abandonment when I was 13, the termination of her parental rights, her failure to pay child support. He showed the judge the rent-free arrangement and the unpaid utility bills. But he wasn't finished. "Furthermore, Your Honor, we have evidence that Mrs. Stevens is not in the financial situation she claims." Mom's head snapped up, her eyes wide. My lawyer continued, "Mrs. Stevens owns an apartment in another city, left to her by a former partner, which she currently rents out for a substantial monthly income." The courtroom fell silent. The judge turned to Mom, his expression stern. "Is this true, Mrs. Stevens?" Mom's face went pale. She opened and closed her mouth a few times before finally whispering, "Yes, Your Honor." The judge's voice was cold as he gave his decision. "This court grants the eviction. Furthermore, Mrs. Stevens will pay back rent for the month she stayed in the apartment rent-free. Mrs. Stevens, your actions are truly unacceptable. This case is closed." The gavel came down with a loud bang, echoing through me. It was over. We'd won. As we left the courtroom, I saw Anna. She looked lost and confused, and my heart ached for her. This wasn't her fault. I walked over to her, ignoring Mom's glare. "Anna," I said gently, "I'm sorry it came to this. If you need real help, you can still reach out to me, okay?" She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Lauren. I didn't know." I gave her a sad smile and walked away, feeling like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. In the weeks that followed, Mom and Anna moved out of my apartment. I heard they'd gone to live in Mom's other property. I didn't try to contact them, and they didn't reach out to me either. As I stood in the now-empty apartment, memories of the past few months ran through my mind. The hope I'd felt when Mom came back, the pain of her betrayal, the stress of the court case. But beneath it all, I felt free. I'm Laura, and I'm 31 years old. I used to live with my parents and my older sister, Mary, but she moved out 3 years ago after she got married. I work from home running an online business. I first got interested in making apps when I was in middle school after my grandfather gave me a computer for my birthday. It turned out to be a big success for me. But sadly, my grandfather passed away 4 years ago. He lived with us, and he was the only person I felt truly close to. After he died, I became more withdrawn. My parents work during the day, and I spend most of my time alone, quietly working. They don't really understand what I do. They just think I'm playing games all day. My sister, Mary, also looks down on me. Growing up, my parents always favored her, and I was often ignored. My interest in computers grew because I felt left out by my family. My grandparents were the only ones who truly cared for me and spent time with me. When I turned 15, they gave me a computer, which led to my current career. My parents have never given me a birthday gift, so this meant a lot to me. Now that both of my grandparents are gone, my room feels like the only place I belong in this house. Even though my parents have their flaws, I don't hate them. They raised me, so I try to help around the house as much as I can. One Thursday morning, my mom suddenly opened my door and asked, "Laura, is breakfast ready?" It was past 8 a.m. "Yes, it's on the table," I replied. Since my grandfather passed away, I've been doing most of the chores around the house. My parents just assume it's natural for me to take care of everything since they think I'm always playing games. I prepare all the meals, clean, do the laundry, and handle the shopping. "Oh, did you see your dad? He had breakfast early and left," Mom added. "Dad's gone out again, huh?" I replied. "Lately, Dad has been leaving early on weekends. My parents don't really fight, but Dad usually can't say no to Mom, so he probably leaves early to escape the busy schedule she plans for him. We haven't really talked since I was in middle school, so this is just what I think. Mary and her family will visit around noon today," Mom mentioned. "Mary's coming?" I asked, a bit surprised.
Don't be so shocked.
"She's your sister after all. It's been a while since you've seen each other, hasn't it?" "Yeah, it's definitely been a while. I think this is the first time she's been home since she got married," I said. Even though Mary got married 3 years ago, and she's gone out to eat with Mom and Dad, she hasn't visited our house until now. When Mary was pregnant, she didn't come home. Our parents went to visit her instead. I figured something important must be going on for her to come now. She wouldn't come without a reason, right? I thought to myself. Yeah, she mentioned she has something to talk about. Since she's coming after so long, make sure to prepare a nice lunch, my mom said. Got it, I replied, even though I felt a bit uneasy. I was excited to meet my nephew, but Mary had always been cold toward me in the past. I realized I hadn't gotten this month's grocery money yet, so I asked, Mom, can I get this month's food money? I'm about to go shopping. Didn't you get it from your father? She replied.
He told me to ask you, I said.
She frowned. I don't have much on me. Last month, I only gave you $100. Here's $50. She slapped the money on the table. But I need the full amount this month, I said. If you worked properly, you wouldn't have these issues. How long are you going to keep wasting time? She snapped. I told you, I am working, I tried to explain. I don't want to hear excuses. You're just playing games for pocket money. Don't talk about working when you can't even live on your own, she said harshly. That's not true, I insisted. Enough. I've given you some money. Get the rest from your father, she said, storming out and slamming the door behind her. After a deep sigh, I went back to my work. Once I found a good stopping point, I went out to do the shopping. I felt uneasy the whole time, so I rushed to finish by early afternoon since Mary was supposed to arrive around then. When I got back home, I started cooking right away while my mom relaxed, watching TV. My dad returned just before noon, and soon after, the doorbell rang. Glad you could come, Mary. Come on in. Mom's cheerful voice filled the house. I'm back. It feels nostalgic being here after so long, Mary said as she stepped inside. Welcome back, Mary.
It's been a while, I said.
Oh, Laura, you're still here, she replied, glancing at me. It was my first time seeing Mary in a long while, and she was dressed head to toe in designer brands with heavier makeup than before. She wore a confident smile as she looked at me, just as she always did. I'm so tired, Mary said, collapsing onto the sofa. I looked around, hoping to see my nephew, and finally spotted my mom holding him. He looked around with wide, curious eyes, which made him even cuter. What are you staring at? Hurry up and get lunch ready, Mom said coldly when she noticed me watching my nephew. Mom, are you still making Laura do all the housework? Mary asked in a mocking tone. Of course. She's just in her room playing games all day, so she might as well be useful, Mom replied. That's true. She costs money just by being here, Mary added with a smile, and they both continued their cheerful conversation. I tried to have a normal conversation with Mary, asking her about her married life. How's married life, Mary? It must be tough with taking care of a child and doing housework, I said, choosing my words carefully. She replied, I don't do any housework. I hate the thought of having to do chores every day like you do. What do you mean? I asked, surprised. We have a housekeeper, so I don't have to do anything, she said with a smug smile. I remembered that Mary's husband is a doctor. When they got engaged, Mom and Mary were thrilled. She was marrying someone wealthy. Wow, having a housekeeper must be nice. Is your husband busy with work? I asked. Yes, he is. He's hardly home, even on his days off, because he often gets emergency calls. Despite our differences, it felt nice to have a somewhat friendly conversation. But then Mary's tone changed. You have such an easy life. Do you even know how hard our parents work? She said, stopping me as I was about to finish preparing the meal. What are you talking about? I replied, confused. You're still pretending to work, aren't you? At your age, you should understand that because you're not independent, Mom has to work harder, she said sharply. I've told you and Mom many times, I work from home and make enough to support myself. You don't have to worry, I explained. If that's true, then move out and live on your own. You say you're earning money, but it's probably just pocket change, right? You've never had to struggle like Mom, she said, not believing a word I said. To her, I was just freeloading off our parents, unable to be independent. I stay in this house because it belonged to Grandpa and Grandma. This place has so many precious memories for me, I replied. I can't believe you're still hanging around here for that reason. If it were me, I wouldn't want to stay in such an old house, she said. The house is old, but we renovated it for Grandpa, with changes to make it easier for him to get around. The kitchen and bathroom were remodeled, and we have newer appliances, so I don't feel like it's inconvenient. Our grandparents loved Mary too, but maybe she felt annoyed by their ways, so she has no attachment to this place. For someone like me, marrying into wealth was the best choice, but that's impossible for you, Mary added, and Mom laughed along with her. You can't get married, you can't show us any grandkids, and you won't even live on your own. You're really useless, Mom said. I don't think marriage is everything. I make my own money, and I'm okay with that, I said, trying to stay calm. Stop saying that and quit lying already. Dad, Mom, and I are all tired of your lies, Mary said coldly. Just then, my nephew started crying, and Mom shot me an angry look. I avoided her gaze and went back to the kitchen, frustrated, to finish preparing lunch in silence. I realized that trying to explain anything more to Mary or Mom would be pointless. Even though Mary criticized me, she still ate everything I'd cooked. I'd heard she had something important to talk about, but by the time she left that evening, she hadn't mentioned anything. However, I noticed something strange about her behavior. She kept checking different areas around the house like the upstairs rooms, bathroom, and kitchen. Since she moved out, we had been gradually remodeling these spaces, and her detailed inspection seemed odd. But she left without saying anything, and I wondered when we'd see each other next. The next morning, while I was making breakfast, Mom spoke up. Make sure the house is clean by next Thursday and prepare a nice dinner. Mary, James, and the kids are coming. They just visited yesterday. Why are they coming again? And why is her husband coming too? I asked, surprised. It's nothing to be so shocked about. Mary said they have something important to discuss, and there's something for you too, so keep your schedule open. I'm just happy I'll get to see the kids again, Mom replied. I felt uneasy. Mary hadn't visited once since she got married, and now, suddenly, she was coming again so soon, and this time with her husband. I couldn't figure out what her real intentions were, but it didn't feel right. What I didn't know was that Mary and Mom were already having discussions about me. Can you believe the house is in Laura's name? What was Dad thinking? Mary asked. Don't worry. If we make Laura feel like she's a burden to everyone, she'll leave. The right to live here should be ours, Mom replied. I got so busy with work that Thursday came before I knew it. The last time I saw Mary's husband, James, was when he came to introduce himself before their wedding. He had decided to become a doctor because of his father. Though he was handsome, there was something cold about him. Mom was thrilled when she found out he was a doctor's son, and she welcomed him warmly. But since then, James hadn't visited, and none of us had seen him until now. When Mary, James, and my nephew arrived, I had already set dinner on the table. James looked like he had lost some weight since I'd last seen him 3 years ago. As I returned to the kitchen, Mary followed me. "Did you pick up these side dishes from a supermarket?" she asked. "I wonder if this food will be good enough for us since we're used to high-quality meals," Mary commented, looking down on the dishes. "This is a dish Grandma taught me how to make, so I know it's good," I replied calmly. Mary looked annoyed for a moment but quickly covered it up, putting on a smile as she started serving the food. During dinner, she mostly bragged about her child, going on about how he was better than other kids. James barely said a word, staying distant and only half listening to her stories. As she continued, Mary gave me a nasty look and said, "Seeing our adorable child, don't you wish you had another grandchild, Mom?" "Yes, we could have had more grandchildren by now, but that's impossible since Laura's not even married," Mom said, glancing at me. "Before thinking about kids, you need to find someone to marry first." "But how could you meet anyone when you're always in your room playing games? And you're still living here without a job," Mary added, piling on the insults. I finished my meal quietly and was about to leave the table when Mom stopped me, her voice filled with anger. "Are you just going to walk away? We're not done. There's something important we need to talk about, so sit down and listen. Let's get to the point, Laura. Can you please leave this house?" Mary said suddenly, leaving me in shock. "You should try living on your own for once. Both Mom and Dad are tired of living with you. If you stay here, you'll never change," she continued, sounding like she was doing me a favor by advising me to move out. "You need to realize how much of a disappointment you are," Mary added. "It would be good for you to learn to earn enough to live on your own and understand how hard life can be." "Wait, Mom. How many times do I have to say I'm working and making my own money? When will you believe me?" I replied, my hands shaking with anger. "Just because you make a little money from your hobbies doesn't mean you're earning a real living," Mom scoffed. "No, I earn enough to pay for my own expenses. I even paid for all the house renovations after Grandpa passed away," I said firmly. I had used my savings to fund the renovations, and my parents knew I had covered every payment. Mary smirked. "Oh, you think you're something, don't you? That money was Grandpa's, wasn't it? Don't act like I didn't know. He gave you money before he passed away, right?" Grandpa had given me a bank book shortly before he died, a result of him and Grandma saving up, worried about my future since they saw how neglected I was. They must have hoped it would help me someday. "How do you even know about that?" I asked, stunned. As soon as Grandpa gave me the bank book, I had stored it away in a drawer and told no one about it. "It was easy to find. I saw it in your drawer," Mary sneered. "But where's the cash card? I couldn't take out any money. How could you do something like that?" "That's terrible," I said, shocked by her actions. "They were always kinder to you," she continued. "But to think they left money just for you, ignoring the rest of us, that's so unfair. Don't disrespect Grandpa and Grandma like that," I replied angrily. "They saved that money because they cared about me." At that moment, I realized why my parents had never brought up the renovation payments. They must have known about the bank book all along and expected me to use it to cover the costs. They assumed I'd used the money from that account to pay for everything. "Let's leave the money aside for now. At least the house has good amenities and new appliances, thanks to it," Mary said dismissively. "I hate that you got it all, but I'll let it go. Grandpa and Grandma probably knew you'd never become independent," she added with a mocking look. Was her recent inspection of the house meant to check on these upgrades? "As your sister, I'm really worried about you, you know," she said, feigning concern. I just glared at her. Ignoring my look, she finally got to her main point. "Actually, James is about to start a new hospital," she said proudly, looking at him, though he kept a serious face.
"What?"
I asked, caught off guard. "We're planning to move here too," she continued. "James wants to build a hospital nearby. There's plenty of open land and not many hospitals around, so we'd use this house as our base." That's why we need you to move out, Mary stated matter-of-factly. But you can't just demand that out of nowhere. I protested. I know the house is in your name, but you should hand it over for Mom and Dad's sake. Just let me have it, she insisted. Why do you get to decide that? Of course, Mom and Dad agree with me, she said confidently. They want you out too. I remembered that Grandpa had transferred the house into my name before he passed away. At first, I didn't understand why Grandpa had put the house in my name, but now it made sense. Mary said, Dad's the real head of this house. Your name on the papers doesn't matter, so just leave quietly.
No.
This house is full of memories of Grandma and Grandpa, I replied. Stop being so childish, she snapped. You're just a parasite here, making things harder for everyone. It's time for you to go, Mary shouted like she was delivering the final blow. Laura, don't you think you're a bad influence on your nephew? My mother added, turning to me. Do you really want him to grow up seeing you depend on us for everything? During all this, my father kept looking down, distracted by his phone, and James just sat silently listening. At that moment, I realized they wouldn't listen to anything I said. I needed to get out of this toxic place.
Fine.
Do whatever you want, I said, heading to my room. I was furious, but I forced myself to think calmly about my next steps. That night, I made a decision. The next morning, after Mary's family left, I went downstairs to find the house still messy from the night before. My parents were still asleep. I grabbed my laptop and went to a nearby cafe to plan. Soon, my phone started buzzing with calls and messages from my mother, demanding I come back to make breakfast. I ignored them and focused on my plan. I looked up moving companies and was able to schedule one for the same day. I timed my return to the house when I knew my parents would be at work. The house was a mess after just a few hours without me, and I couldn't help but feel a mix of frustration and relief. Shortly after, the movers arrived with a truck. Which items are we taking? One of the movers asked. Everything I bought, I replied. The movers quickly packed up all my belongings, appliances like the washing machine, fridge, and microwave, along with smaller items like dishes. After they were done, the house felt empty and strangely sad. Legally, this house was still mine, but I no longer wanted to be here. As I left, I felt a sense of freedom and knew I wasn't wasting my grandparents' love and care. That evening, my mother called, furious. What's going on? All the appliances are gone. Did you take them? Of course I did, I answered. You wanted me out, so I'm leaving. And I'm taking what I bought with me. I'm glad you're leaving, but it's not right to take the appliances, my mother said. Why not? They're mine. I bought them. You bought them with Grandpa's money?
No.
How many times do I have to say it? The money from Grandpa is very important to me. I wouldn't touch it. I bought everything with my own money. I sent her a picture of my bank book showing today's date to prove it. I had just withdrawn $170, so the balance should have been clear. You're horrible to do this to your own parents.
Fine.
We don't need your appliances. We'll ask Mary and her family for help. I don't care, but you all need to leave quickly. That house is in my name. Don't be ridiculous. That was the last I heard from my mother. Inside, I hoped James could buy the house, not just the appliances. A few days later, Mary contacted me sooner than I expected. Laura, I hope you've calmed down now. Can we talk just one more time, please? Her tone sounded different, as if she was being careful. What do you want? I'm busy with work. Make it quick. I've been thinking. It was a mistake to try to kick you out. We're family. Shouldn't we live together? After calling me a parasite, now you want to talk about families? Absolutely not. You guys have moved in already, haven't you? Yes, we moved in yesterday, but there have been some problems. Oh, about James. He got fired from the hospital, right? I know. It's amazing you kept quiet about it. How do you know that? I'm not as clueless as you think. A friend of mine works in admin at the hospital James was at. She told me he was fired for having an affair. It turns out that James had an affair with a nurse and got her pregnant. He tried to convince her not to have the baby to keep the affair a secret, but the angry woman exposed everything at the hospital. Fearing for the hospital's reputation, James's father decided to fire him. James couldn't tell Mary the truth, so he made up a story about building a new hospital to have a place to live. I just found out about it recently and was shocked. Now he has no money and is being sued for compensation by the woman's husband. Plus, Dad has left home. What happened to Dad? According to Mary, it seems my father also had an affair. He left a note and divorce papers before moving out, right before Mary and her family were supposed to move in. Apparently, he wrote complaints about my mother in the note, and after reading it, my mother became bedridden. You can't just leave us in this situation. Right, Laura? You'll help us, won't you? You still have the money Grandpa gave you, right? What are you saying now? I asked, and my mother showed me the photo of the bank book. After all this time of not believing I could support myself, it's funny how they finally believe I'm working, just when it suits them. You can't rely on me only when it's convenient. I'm not coming back. I put up with everything because that house held Grandma and Grandpa's memories, but now I realize those memories will always be with me. Wait, please, Mary begged. I don't have any good memories with you, Mom or Dad, so asking for my help now doesn't feel right. And remember, the house is in my name, so you'll need to move out soon. Saying all this out loud made my heart feel lighter, and I knew I could now find real happiness. Please, Laura, you're really going to abandon your family like this? I didn't respond to any more calls or messages from my mom or Mary. For the first 4 months, they kept trying, but they eventually gave up, and now my days are peaceful. I heard that Mary and James opened a hospital with borrowed money, but no patients come. Probably because James's affair partner has been spreading bad rumors. My mom developed depression from the shock of my dad leaving and is now in the hospital. When I moved out, I decided to sell the house, and I went through with it. Seeing the for sale notice, Mary and her family had no choice but to move into a nearby apartment. With debts and no patients, they're struggling, but that's no longer my concern. I do hope my nephew finds happiness. He's innocent in all this. As for me, my work is going well, and I'm even expanding my business. I'm grateful to my grandparents, and I hope to someday find a place where I truly belong. I'm determined to keep living my life to the fullest. My husband has always been really closing to his mom, so much that he's like a mama's boy. But I never expected her to get so mad at me the way she did. It all started when she went through my purse without asking. First off, that's a huge invasion of privacy.
Who does that?
While snooping, she found some money and immediately accused me of stealing it.
Why?
Because she didn't even know I had a job. She thought I was just a stay-at-home wife. But in reality, I'm the one earning the money in our household. They even tried to kick me out of my own house, claiming I had stolen their money. So I left and went across the street to a hotel. When I got there, the hotel manager welcomed me warmly.
Why?
Because I work there. You should have seen the look on my mother-in-law's face when she realized this. Now, I'm writing this post because I feel so lost. I've made this account just to share my story and hopefully get some advice from others who might have been through something similar. I've already read so many posts from people in tough situations, but none of them seem to fit what I'm going through. Before I go further, I want to admit that I know I made some mistakes to end up here. I should have seen the red flags, but I didn't. Now, all I can do is figure out my next steps. Please don't judge me. I just need help to move forward. If you're still with me, here's why I'm posting this. I'm 30, and I'm starting to think my husband might be cheating on me. The problem is I rely completely on him and his parents, so leaving feels impossible. I'll explain everything in sections so it's easier to understand, and not just one big rant. Why I think my husband is cheating. I'm not someone who jumps to conclusions easily. I try to stay calm and think things through. But my husband, Randy, has never been good at sharing his thoughts or communicating what he wants. Because of that, I'm starting to notice things that feel off. This is just the beginning, and I'm trying to figure out what to do next. I hope sharing my story here will help me find some clarity and advice. I've had to learn to read between the lines and assume I don't always have all the information. I try not to overreact, and I've always given my husband a lot of trust. After all, we've been married for almost 10 years now, and I'd like to think I know his behavior well, what's normal and what isn't. When we first got married, he was in the military, but he was discharged a few years ago due to an injury. So, I'm not just calling him a cheater because he's been going out more than usual. I don't assume he's unfaithful every time he's out of my sight. But there are multiple reasons, real reasons, that have made me think something is going on. Why I think he's cheating. Lately, he's been going out much more often. When he bothers to explain, he says it's because he's working late. He's a real estate agent, so his schedule has always been a bit unpredictable. At first, I didn't think much of it. But over time, he started coming home later and later, always sticking to the excuse that he was working. Then there's his phone. He's constantly on it now, much more than he used to be. He says it's for work, but he already has a work phone that he uses for business. The extra time he's spending on his personal phone feels suspicious. A few weeks ago, I even saw him using Snapchat, which he's never used before, at least not that I know of. I can't imagine work-related conversations happening on Snapchat. There are other things too. Sometimes, he comes home smelling like a woman's perfume. Other times, he looks more put together than he should after supposedly working late. I'm not sure if these are solid reasons to feel this way, but in my heart, I know something is wrong. I believe he's being unfaithful, and probably still is. Why I haven't confronted him or left. You're probably wondering why I haven't just talked to him about this or left. The truth is, talking to him wouldn't help. He doesn't handle problems well, no matter how gently I bring them up. Every time I try, he turns it around on me, making it seem like I'm the problem. If I mention this, I know he'll accuse me of not trusting him, and somehow, I'll end up feeling guilty and apologizing. It's happened before, not with cheating but with other issues. Looking back, I realize this pattern now. At the time, I didn't see it for what it was. But now, I'm stuck, unsure of what to do next. When I think about talking to Randy about my concerns, I just know it'll end up being something I'll have to apologize for. So, I feel like I have no choice but to consider leaving. And before anyone says I'm being too quick to give up or making a big decision over one problem, let me explain more about my marriage. I got married at 20, the same year I graduated high school. Randy was 25 and in the Navy. He completely swept me off my feet. I didn't have much of a family. My dad left when I was a freshman in high school, and my mom basically gave up on life after that. She passed away when I was 20. By then, I was completely alone in the world. Then Randy came into my life. Within 5 months of meeting him, I was signing my name on a marriage certificate. He told me he didn't want to drag me around from one Navy station to another, even though I would have followed him anywhere. He said I'd already been through so much instability in my life and deserved a proper home and family. After we got married, we moved in with his parents, and shortly after, he was deployed. I never complained. I was just so grateful that someone cared enough to try to give me the stable family life I'd never had. Randy's father was also in the Navy, and his parents had very traditional values. The man earns the money, and the woman takes care of the home. When Randy and I got married, his mom took it upon herself to train me to be the perfect homemaker. I was 20, barely an adult, and thrilled to finally have a family. I wanted to fit in, so I did whatever was expected of me. I didn't question their rules or expectations, and because of that, the demands kept piling up. I was expected to embrace the role of a perfect little wife. That meant staying home, cooking, cleaning, and taking care of my in-laws. For the past 9 years, that's all I've done. Early on, I was even discouraged from leaving the house alone since Randy was deployed, and we lived in the middle of the city. Over time, I just stopped going out altogether. Even when Randy came back and started working as a real estate agent, nothing changed. My life stayed confined to the house, and I kept living up to their expectations without question. I never left the house, and over time, the few friendships I had just disappeared. Within the first couple of years of marriage, my world became all about Randy and his parents. They were my entire universe. Their strict, traditional family values meant I couldn't talk back, disagree, or even dress the way I wanted. I wasn't allowed to have opinions that didn't match my husband's. It took me a long time to realize just how bad this was. That realization started a few months ago when I first suspected Randy might be cheating. Deep down, I've always known the way they've treated me isn't right. But since they're the only family I have, I didn't want to face the truth. The hardest thing to accept is knowing that, even if I wanted to leave, I couldn't. I have no one else to turn to. I don't have an education, a job, or any experience. I'm almost 33 years old, with nothing but a high school diploma and a blank resume. I've looked at job listings in my city, but they just made me feel worse. I'm not qualified for anything, and I don't have any savings to help me get by while I figure things out. I have nothing, and I feel completely stuck. I honestly don't know what to do. I need help, so please tell me, what would you do in my situation? Update 1. Thank you for your kindness. Hi, everyone. First, I want to thank all of you who commented or reached out after my last post. I'm not sure how to link it here, but it's the only other post on this account if you want to read it. I can't tell you how much your kindness, advice, and support mean to me. After I posted, I spent hours panicking. I was so scared someone might find my post and figure out it was me. I even thought about deleting it so many times that night. But the next day, my mother-in-law's side of the family came to visit, and I got so busy hosting that I forgot about the post for a few days. By the end of the week, I came back to find so many messages and comments from amazing people offering advice and support. I read every single one, and I took all of your advice to heart. You've given me so much to think about, and I'm truly grateful. Thank you for helping me feel like I'm not alone in this. I looked into a women's shelter nearby and even called them once, but they didn't answer, and I never got around to calling again. I did, however, read a lot of information and personal stories on their website. One blog post stood out to me. It was about a woman who turned her life around after leaving an unhealthy marriage by starting a job as a cleaner. One day, I was driving home after dropping my mother-in-law off at her social club when I noticed a help wanted sign at a hotel not far from home. Since dropping her off and picking her up were the only times I ever left the house, seeing that sign felt like pure luck. I decided to go in and ask about the job. When I walked in, I ended up talking to the hotel manager. I explained, in a professional way, that I really needed a job and didn't have any qualifications. I think God was truly looking out for me that day because she decided to give me a chance. She offered me a housekeeping position, even though I couldn't work many hours, and said she'd work around whatever schedule I could manage. I don't know if she sensed how much I needed this opportunity or if it was just kindness, but she believed in me. I started working 5 days ago. After dropping off my mother-in-law, I drive home, park the car, and walk to the hotel. It's not far, and I don't want anyone to notice the car missing. Plus, I don't mind the walk. At the end of this week, I'll be getting my first paycheck ever. It might not seem like a big deal to others, but for me, it's a step forward. It's progress, and I thank God every day for this chance. Update 2. Feeling defeated. I don't even know where to begin. I'm in shock. I really thought things were getting better. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally taking steps toward freedom and independence. I thought I was on the right track. But now, I'm worse off than I've ever been. Part of me thinks I should have been more careful, but the bigger part of me is wondering if I made a mistake by even trying to change my life. I wanted freedom so badly, in any form, but now I don't know if I made the right choice. I feel lost again. 4 weeks ago, I started working as a housekeeper at a hotel. When I made my last update, I felt on top of the world, like I had everything figured out. I would go to work when everyone was out, and I'd always be home before they got back. It was working perfectly, until it wasn't. Tonight, we went out for dinner to celebrate my father-in-law. He had a great article written about him in the local news. After leaving the Navy, he became a politician in our small town, and he's been doing really well over the last few years. This article was like the cherry on top of his success. Everyone was in high spirits during dinner. Afterward, he got a call from some of his friends and colleagues inviting him out. So he left, and it was just me, Randy, and my mother-in-law heading home. I was carrying my purse, and at some point, during dinner, my mother-in-law had slipped her phone into it without me noticing. On the way home, she reached into my bag to get her phone, and instead pulled out my wages for the week. I had put the money in there earlier in the day and completely forgotten about it while rushing to get ready for dinner. Of course, she wanted to know where I got the money. I froze. Before I could say anything, she jumped to her own conclusion. She told Randy to pull over, and when he did, she accused me of stealing. I denied it, telling them I had earned the money. But as far as they knew, I didn't have a job. I never left the house, so where else could the money have come from? They kept accusing me, and I kept denying it, but they wouldn't believe me. Then Randy leaned over, opened the passenger door, and told me to get out. I just sat there, frozen. This time, he didn't even argue. He got out of the car, walked to my side, pulled me out, and left me standing on the sidewalk. I was still in shock, holding my bag, when he snatched my purse from me, got back in the car, and drove off. My mother-in-law rolled down the window and said, "Thieves deserve to live on the streets. Maybe if you don't tell them, they'll let you in as a homeless person for the night." I turned around, and behind me was the hotel, the very same hotel where I work and had earned the money. I don't know what came over me at that moment. I was so overwhelmed by everything that I just laughed, not because it was funny, but out of pure disbelief. I didn't know what to think or how to react. So I walked straight to the hotel. By some miracle, the same manager who had hired me, Abigail, was at the front desk. For the past 4 weeks, she'd been checking in on me, even though she could tell there was something about my situation I wasn't sharing. When I walked in, looking completely shell-shocked, with nothing but the clothes I was wearing, she didn't ask questions. She just hugged me and took me to the back room. Thankfully, I still had my phone with me. Update 3. Where I am now. I wanted to update everyone who's been commenting and messaging me. I don't have much to say, but I'll answer your questions and share what's happened in the last few days since my husband and mother-in-law kicked me out. After Abigail took me to the back room, she comforted me until I could think straight enough to talk. I ended up telling her everything. Maybe it was unprofessional to share so much with my manager, but in that moment I needed someone, and she was there. Abigail listened patiently, and when I finally finished, feeling embarrassed and ashamed for unloading all of that on her, she surprised me. She said she was sorry I'd been going through so much. I couldn't believe it. Here I was, bothering a woman I'd only known for 4 weeks, and instead of judging me, she offered nothing but understanding. Abigail told me she had suspected there was more to my story from the moment I came to the hotel looking for a job. She said she would never turn her back on a woman in need. Then, she told me something shocking. She had seen Randy and my mother-in-law's faces when they realized she'd welcomed me into the hotel. She said they looked pale as ghosts before driving off in a rush, almost like they were the guilty ones. Abigail went above and beyond for me. She gave me a room to stay in, sent up some hot chocolate, and even found a spare charger for my phone. That's where I wrote my last update from. The next morning, as if she hadn't already done enough, Abigail came to see me again. She brought documents proving I'd been working at the hotel, along with my pay slips for the last 4 weeks. She said, "No one's going to make you feel like you have to defend yourself. You've earned this money, and you deserve your dignity." Abigail's kindness has been more than I could have ever asked for, and I'm so grateful for her. She didn't just give me a job, she gave me a chance to start over. I hadn't stolen a thing, and I was determined to prove it. Abigail drove me to my in-laws' house, what used to be my home. I didn't want to drag her any further into my problems, so I went inside alone. I didn't really have a plan, and I wasn't sure what I was hoping to achieve. When I showed Randy the documents proving I'd earned the money from my job, he just looked at them and said it didn't change anything. He told me I had gone behind his back and that it would take a lot for him to forgive me. His mother agreed, saying I couldn't blame them for their reaction because I had broken their trust. In that moment, I realized something. If I gave in, apologized, and begged for forgiveness, I'd never get out of this. I'd never have another chance to change my life. It took every ounce of strength I had to walk into our bedroom, grab a few things, and leave as quickly as I could. I'm so thankful I followed the advice from a commenter who told me to have my important documents ready to go. Those were the first things I grabbed. And I'm even more grateful that when I walked out, practically running as Randy screamed at me, Abigail was still waiting for me outside. So, here I am now, sitting in a hotel room with just a duffel bag and nothing else to my name. This is what I wanted, isn't it? Update 4. Standing up for myself. For 10 years, I did everything my husband and his parents told me to do. I learned to be a good wife, the perfect daughter-in-law, a homemaker, a maid, and their errand girl. I learned that when they said something, it wasn't my place to argue. But when they threw me out into the street in the middle of the night, they lost the right to have me silently follow their rules. And when they came into my workplace and berated Abigail, the one person who ever stood up for me, they crossed the line. Abigail is the only person who has supported me in the last decade, and I decided I was done being passive. I was right at the end of my last update. This is what I wanted. I gained nothing by sitting here, wallowing, and letting them control my life. There were even bruises on my arm from where Randy had grabbed me to pull me out of the car. I didn't notice them at first, but when I finally did later that night, I realized just how much I had let myself endure without saying anything. I didn't know what to do with that realization at first, but now I do. I'm done letting them hurt me, and I'm not going back. I figured it all out when Randy and my mother-in-law showed up at the hotel. They came in thinking they could confront Abigail, accusing her of sticking her nose where it doesn't belong and filling my head with nonsense. Then they try to threaten Abigail's job by name-dropping my father-in-law, the politician. But I was ready for them. I had already taken the CCTV footage from the night Randy threw me out and paired it with photos of my bruises. I went straight to the police. I didn't care if they couldn't take action. I just wanted to make a report and make sure they had the evidence. I also emailed everything to the same newspaper that had recently written a glowing article about my father-in-law. You know, the one we were celebrating when this whole mess began. As of this morning, 3 local newspapers and 4 websites have published stories about a prominent local politician's wife and son abusing his daughter-in-law and throwing her into the street. Each article has called out Randy and his mother, putting a spotlight on the so-called family values my father-in-law claims to uphold. So far, I haven't spoken to any of them. But I've received at least 10 calls from my husband, my in-laws, and a bunch of unknown numbers, probably them or maybe journalists. I don't know if they're looking for me, and I don't care. I don't plan on seeing them again until I have a lawyer and file for divorce. Right now, I'm staying in Abigail's apartment, far away from the people I once called family. It's scary. I don't know what the future holds, and I don't have everything figured out. But I know this. It's better than going back. It will get better. Last night, I read a quote that said, "To build your new life, sometimes you have to burn your old one to the ground. It's painful, and it's not easy, but it's necessary." This is what I need to do to move forward and finally build a life of my own. Update 5. The final update. Hi, everyone. I never thought I'd come back to this post, especially after all these months, but I just had to share the good news with the people who helped give me the strength to break free. I just got promoted. It's not official yet and won't take effect immediately. It might not even happen this year, but I've been accepted into a management training program at the hotel. It's a small step, but it's mine. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm building something real for myself. Thank you to everyone who supported me through this journey. Your kindness and advice gave me the courage to take control of my life. Thank you, truly. I'm still working as a housekeeper, which, after all those years of homemaking, turns out to be something I'm really good at. But now, I'm being trained to take over the housekeeping management role. Along with the promotion comes a nice pay raise, and I'm now a full-time salaried employee. Can you believe it? On top of that, I'll be working more closely with the head of housekeeping, who told me she sees me as capable and even suggested I could take over her position when she retires in a couple of years. Not only is that an important role, but it also feels amazing to know someone believes in me and sees my potential. On another note, I'm also in the process of getting a divorce. I eventually reached out to the women's shelter I called before, and they helped me connect with a divorce lawyer who specializes in cases like mine. If all goes well, Randy will have to cover the cost of my legal representation. I won't go into too much detail about the legal stuff. It's long, complicated, and not as interesting as the rest of what's happened. Speaking of Randy, things took quite a turn for him after the media circus surrounding the police reports and CCTV footage. His father's office released a public statement disowning Randy's actions. They even said his father was so disgusted with Randy's behavior that he cut him off entirely. Since Randy was still living with his parents, cutting him off meant he was kicked out of their house. You'd think that wouldn't be a problem for a supposedly busy real estate agent, but it turns out Randy wasn't as booked and busy as he claimed. He's now living with his maternal aunt and has been sending me texts complaining about how I abandoned him and how he's been left with nothing. He even brought up our vows, saying I left him in his time of need. I haven't responded to any of his messages, but I've been forwarding all of them to my lawyer. As for Randy's father, he's been scrambling to repair his public image. His political rivals wasted no time using the scandal against him. From Randy's texts, I know his father has banned his mother from going to her social clubs because he doesn't trust her to keep quiet and not make things worse. Apparently, she's now stuck in the house, just like I used to be, while Randy is completely banned from the property. As for me, I'd rather focus on my promotion and the new chapter of my life. Thank you all so much for your support. It means the world to me.
Goodbye.
Where's the ATM card? Let me handle it, Scott said, his voice calm but with a hint of control. I was lying in the hospital, battling cancer, weak and tired from the treatments. His face wore a small, triumphant smile as he took the card, making me feel uneasy. There was something in his look, something that hinted he might have his own plans now that he had my ATM card. Just so you know, there's $800,000 in that account. Handle it carefully, I told him, trying to trust him as my husband. I hoped he would be there for me, but I also had a plan in mind. I had thought through everything and decided to trust him, even with this risk. When I got out of the hospital, I went home to pick up some things. But what I found shocked me. A divorce application lying on the table. My heart sank, confirming the fears I had deep down. Scott had taken the ATM card, along with everything we had built together. But rather than feeling defeated, I saw this as the beginning of my own plan to fight back. I'm Shirley, a woman in my 50s, and this is my story. When I first married Scott, I thought I had a wonderful husband. He seemed kind and caring. For the first 3 months, our marriage was smooth, but things changed quickly. His true colors began to show. Scott acted as if he believed that a wife should always put her husband first, no matter what. This attitude slowly revealed a darker side to his personality. He became harsh and demanding, using his words as weapons. His favorite saying was, "A wife should always listen to her husband." Whenever I didn't follow his exact wishes, he would lash out, calling me names and making me feel like a failure. He even had specific demands about household chores. He insisted I wash his clothes separately and clean his room first before anything else in the house, no matter how busy or tired I was. Even meals became part of his demands. He would say, a wife's job is to make what her husband wants. Yet, sometimes he wouldn't eat the food I made, not because he didn't like it, but because he wasn't in the mood, without even telling me beforehand. I was frustrated and exhausted by his behavior. It felt like I was always walking on eggshells, trying to please him, but never succeeding. Each mistake I made would make things worse at home, adding to the tension between us. Living in this way was draining me. One day, while doing the endless chores he demanded, I felt dizzy and lost consciousness. I collapsed with a loud noise that startled our neighbor. They called the building manager, who came to check on me and immediately called an ambulance. I woke up in the hospital, finally realizing just how much stress and exhaustion I had endured. In that moment, I knew it was time for me to take control. As soon as I arrived at the hospital, they admitted me for tests. I hoped they wouldn't find anything serious, but my hopes quickly faded. The doctors diagnosed me with cancer, and it hit me hard. I wasn't sure if it was caused by stress, but I knew I was in a terrible state. I felt so dizzy that I could barely stand, and a nurse had to hold me up and help me sit down. The doctor suggested I contact my family, so I tried calling my parents. However, my mother had passed away a few years back, and my father now lived with my brother and his wife, 5 hours away by plane. It wasn't possible for them to come quickly. Feeling helpless, I decided to call my husband, Scott. I left him a message, but he didn't respond. It seemed like he had turned off notifications for messages from me, so he might not see it right away. The doctor advised me not to try getting my things from home by myself, so I let go of the idea, even though I needed a change of clothes and some toiletries. Hours later, Scott finally sent me a brief message saying, "I'll come to the hospital tomorrow. Wait for me." His message felt cold and uncaring, and I wondered if he would even bring my things with him. I had already asked Scott multiple times to bring my belongings that day, but he hadn't responded. My need was urgent, as I had nothing with me in the hospital. After hours of worry and waiting, he finally read my messages and sent a shocking reply: "Shut up and be quiet." His response was so hurtful, especially knowing I was hospitalized and dealing with a cancer diagnosis. I felt disappointed, but I shouldn't have been surprised. Scott had never shown much care, but part of me still held on to a little hope. The first day in the hospital was rough, made worse by Scott's lack of support. The nurses saw my distress and tried to comfort me, but their kindness only made me feel worse, like a reminder of what was missing in my marriage. The next day, around noon, Scott finally showed up. He looked at me and said casually, "You look healthier than I thought. I expected you to be more frail." His comment hurt, and I couldn't hold back my anger. "Just put down the bags and leave," I told him, trying to stay calm.
Scott looked confused.
"What bags?" he asked, as if he had no idea what I was talking about. My frustration grew. He hadn't even brought my things after I'd clearly told him I needed them. I glared at him, unable to hide my anger. He noticed my look and snapped, "What's that look for?" His indifference was pushing me to my limit, but I took a deep breath and tried to stay composed. "If you didn't bring my things, why are you here?" I asked, feeling a mix of sadness and frustration. Scott responded to my angry question with a casual, "I had another errand." "Another errand? What was so important?" I asked, feeling exhausted and drained after a sleepless, stressful night. I waited, watching him hesitate, as if he was deciding whether to tell me the truth. "If you have something to say it now," I insisted. Finally, he let out a small laugh and said, "Where's the ATM card? Let me manage it. Trust me." His real purpose became clear in that moment. He had come here not out of concern for me, but to get control of the ATM card and seize our savings for himself. His self-centeredness, even in this situation, made me feel a deep sadness, yet Scott stood there, smiling as if nothing was wrong. Unable to bear his behavior anymore, I made a decision. "There's $800,000 in that account," I told him firmly. "Take care of it." Scott's eyes lit up with surprise and greed. To give some background, both Scott and I had worked regular office jobs before we got married, and we didn't make much money back then. So, where did this $800,000 come from? The answer was stocks. After I became a housewife, I started investing in the stock market on a friend's advice. I did this quietly, while taking care of the house, and recently I had made a large profit. Initially, I wanted to keep this money hidden, afraid of what Scott might do if he found out about it. But now, my desire for revenge drove me to tell him. Seeing his greedy reaction confirmed my suspicions. "The ATM card is in the third drawer of the shelf," I said with a gentle smile. "Go ahead, take it." Scott looked stunned, but he quickly regained his composure. "Understood," he replied with enthusiasm. It was clear he thought he was winning, not realizing he was stepping right into my trap. "I'll leave everything to you," I said as he left the room, clearly excited to get his hands on the money. What he didn't know was that withdrawing such a large sum would take time. The banks were closed that day for a holiday, and Scott had work the next morning, which meant he couldn't access the money right away. This gave me the perfect opportunity to carry out my plan. I spoke with my doctor and got permission to leave the hospital briefly. Tomorrow would be the day I set my revenge in motion. I could barely wait. The next day, I went home under the excuse of picking up some belongings, but my real reason was to check on something else. As I entered the living room, I noticed 3 papers lying on the table, a divorce application and a hastily written letter. The letter read, "Sorry for the rush, but let's get divorced. Please sign and submit the divorce papers." I checked the shelf and confirmed my suspicion. The ATM card was gone.
Scott had taken it.
Most people would feel devastated to lose such a large sum, but instead, I felt a small smile creep onto my face. "Operation successful," I whispered to myself. If Scott had been there, he would have been furious, demanding to know what I meant. I started by filling out the divorce application, putting an official end to our relationship. Then, I packed the essentials I needed for my stay in the hospital. Leaving the house we had shared for years felt strange, but I didn't look back. On my way out, I submitted the divorce application, making sure our ties were truly cut. Back at the hospital, I prepared for the new challenges ahead, speaking with my doctor about my treatment and what I should expect. Later, while resting in my hospital room, I noticed multiple missed calls on my phone, all from Scott. He had also sent several messages, mostly asking about how to withdraw the money. To avoid disturbing my roommate, I stepped into the hospital's common area, where phone calls were allowed, and returned his call. Finally, "I can't withdraw the money. Please tell me how to do it," Scott said, sounding more panicked than I had imagined. It seemed he needed the $800,000 urgently, but I felt no need to help him. "If you can't withdraw it, then give up," I replied, keeping my voice calm and cold. "Don't be so harsh," he pleaded. "We were husband and wife after all. Maybe we should help each other." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Husband and wife. Helping each other? His words felt like nonsense. Scott's actions had shown he only cared about himself, and I knew he was driven by nothing but greed. "Are you really having trouble withdrawing the money?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Yes," he answered, sounding desperate. "I urgently need that $800,000. Please, just tell me what to do." Hearing him so desperate was something new. It was almost amusing to hear him, usually so controlling, sounding so cornered. I almost laughed, but I kept myself composed and decided to give him the truth. "The method you're trying is correct," I told him, letting the words sink in. "But the ATM card you have now? It won't work anymore." There was silence on the other end as he processed what I had said. The card he had taken would no longer give him access to the money. I could imagine the shock on his face as he realized he had fallen right into my plan. I spoke plainly. "The card won't work anymore," I said, hearing the disbelief in Scott's voice. "What do you mean?" he shot back. "An ATM card should just work." "Yes, normally it would," I replied, "but the one you took is now useless." "Why?" he demanded, sounding both shocked and frustrated. "Because I filed a report for a stolen card earlier today. The ATM card is now just a piece of plastic, useless to you," I explained calmly. There was silence on the other end as he tried to absorb the news. That morning, I had stopped by the bank and reported the card as stolen. Scott had taken it without my permission, planning to take the $800,000 I had saved up for himself. His actions were clear theft, and I had every right to protect my money. Now, the card he had was blocked, and he could no longer access any of those funds. On top of that, I had already submitted the divorce papers, ending any claim he might have thought he had as my husband. How does it feel to be outsmarted by the woman you always looked down on? I couldn't help but add with a sense of satisfaction. "I don't know what you needed the $800,000 for, but I'm not about to hand over that money under these circumstances." Desperation filled his voice. "I need that money right now. Please, I'll do anything. Just give me the money." His urgency was almost overwhelming, and I felt a sense of curiosity. What had he done that made him so desperate for such a large sum? "Why do you suddenly need $800,000? What's going on?" I asked, waiting for his answer. After a long pause, Scott started explaining. 3 days ago, when he learned about the $800,000, he impulsively quit his job. Expecting that he would have access to my savings, he started spending recklessly, even gambling, and quickly ran up a debt of $600,000. Now, the lenders were demanding that he repay the debt within a week, or there would be severe consequences. He had assumed he could solve everything with my ATM card, convinced the money was already his. Scott went on, telling me how he had been living lavishly, assuming that once he had the card, he'd be set for life. But when he tried to withdraw the money, he realized the card was blocked. Now, without access to the $800,000, he was in deep trouble. "My future is in ruins without that money," Scott admitted, his voice full of desperation. He had abandoned the divorce papers he once left on the table and, shamelessly, reached out to me for help, hoping I'd feel sorry for him. But after everything he had done, I felt no pity for him. Scott's voice shook with fear. "I don't know what will happen if this continues," he said, sounding truly panicked. It was clear he wasn't lying. His reckless actions had finally caught up with him. He had gone wild, spending $600,000 in just a few days, blinded by the thought of easy money. I sighed deeply. The old me, the one who had once put up with his terrible behavior and tried to keep the peace, might have felt sorry for him and offered help. But I was different now. The love I once felt for Scott was long gone, replaced with a sense of indifference. No matter how much he begged, I felt no pity. If anything, I felt a faint amusement that he thought I'd care enough to bail him out. But Scott kept pleading. "Please, you're the only one I have left," he begged. His constant appeals grated on my nerves. I wanted to free myself from this burden and focus on my recovery. This mess was entirely his doing, and I had no reason to help. "If you had shown even a bit of concern for me as a husband and brought me my things when I asked, maybe I would have considered sharing some of the $800,000 with you," I told him. "But you didn't. You only thought about yourself." I kept my tone firm. "I'm sorry, but I have no intention of giving you the $800,000 or helping you out of this mess. It's your responsibility to deal with the consequences." Scott's desperation grew. "Don't be so cruel. We were married, after all. You can't just erase everything we had because of one piece of paper." "What relationship?" I shot back, my voice sharp. "You've only leaned on me, taking advantage whenever it suited you. Now you're trying to manipulate me to get what you want. I refuse to waste any more time on you, and I won't give you the $800,000, no matter what you say." Scott's voice became frantic. "Please, Shirley, I'm begging you. You're the only person I can turn to. If you abandon me, I don't know what will happen." His words had a tone of blame, as if somehow I was at fault for his situation. But the truth was clear. His own careless spending had led him here. If he hadn't splurged recklessly, if he hadn't cut me out of his plans, he wouldn't be in this mess. This was entirely his doing. "Stop making excuses," I replied, my voice steady and cold. "You're just facing the consequences of your own choices. Handle it yourself." With that, I ended the conversation, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Scott had dug this hole, and now he would have to find his own way out. For once, I was free to focus on myself and my own healing. I ended the call with a firm, final message to Scott. When he kept calling back, I ignored him and eventually blocked his number to stop any further communication. With the divorce papers filed and submitted, Scott and I were no longer connected in any way. I was officially free from him. Feeling a sense of relief, I turned my attention fully to fighting cancer. It was a tough journey, filled with treatments and struggles, but I finally overcame it. When I was discharged from the hospital, I felt like a new person, ready to start fresh. After leaving the hospital, I heard from a friend that Scott had disappeared. Desperate after losing contact with me and not being able to access any money, he had tried borrowing from his family and friends. He begged them for $600,000, but his urgent pleas made people suspicious, and no one was willing to lend him a cent. What happened to him after that was unknown to me, but it seemed he was going through more hardship than he ever expected. Knowing this brought me a sense of closure and satisfaction. After recovering, I decided to leave the house I once shared with Scott. I found a new place to live, one that felt peaceful and entirely my own. I also began working from home, enjoying the independence and freedom that came with this new phase of life. My finances were secure, and I felt grateful to have control over my life again. Sometimes friends would ask me if I planned to find new love or consider remarrying. The memories of my painful time with Scott quickly put an end to any thoughts of marriage. I had learned to value my freedom, and I loved the peace of living on my own. In my new home, I felt at ease and at peace, with a fresh start ahead. I never thought a single text could change my life, but there I was, sitting in my car at a red light, grinning at my phone like a fool. On the screen was a photo of a pregnancy test, 2 pink lines. After 4 years of trying, it finally happened. I couldn't wait to show Aiden. My name is Audrey, and that moment of pure happiness was the last I'd feel for a long, long time. I remember every detail of those few seconds. The way the afternoon sun lit up my dashboard. The faint scent of the air freshener Aiden always joked about. The song playing on the radio, a cheesy pop hit about forever love that I usually roll my eyes at but suddenly felt just right. The light turned green, and I started driving, already imagining Aiden's face when he saw the picture. He'd been dropping hints about wanting kids since our wedding, and his mom, Alyssa, had been asking about grandchildren at every family dinner. I never saw the truck coming. The crash came from the left, a violent smash of metal and glass. Everything spun and time slowed down. In the chaos, one thought flashed in my mind. Protect the phone. Aiden has to see the picture. When the world finally stopped moving, I couldn't feel my face. Warm liquid dripped down my neck. Somewhere far away, I heard screaming. A man's voice kept repeating, "Oh God, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry." The words floated around me like leaves in the wind. "Ma'am, can you hear me?"
Don't move, someone said.
A paramedic leaned into what was left of my window. "We're going to get you out." I tried to speak, to tell them about the baby, but my mouth wouldn't work. The last thing I remember was someone holding my hand and promising everything's going to be okay. They lied. I woke up 5 days later in the hospital. Aiden was there, asleep in a chair beside my bed. He looked awful, unshaven, his clothes wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. I tried to lift my arm to reach for him, but it felt too heavy, like it wasn't mine. "Aiden," I whispered. My voice barely made a sound. He jolted awake, his eyes locking on mine. For a moment, I saw something in his expression, something that made my stomach tighten. Then he smiled, but it didn't feel real. "Hey," he said, taking my hand. "You had us worried." I tried to smile back, but my face didn't feel right. It felt stiff, like it didn't belong to me. "The baby," I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. Aiden's hand tightened on mine. "I'm so sorry, Audrey," he said, his voice shaking. "The doctors did everything they could." I closed my eyes as the world seemed to spin beneath me. Through the haze of pain medication, I heard the door open. The familiar scent of Alyssa's perfume reached me before she spoke. "Aiden, honey, the doctor needs to talk to you," she said softly, her voice careful. "About the reconstruction options," Aiden said quickly. "I'll be right back." He squeezed my hand and let go. I kept my eyes closed, pretending to be asleep, but their voices drifted in from the hallway through the partially open door. "She's going to need a lot of surgeries," Aiden said, his voice low. "Her face, Mom. I don't know if I can." "Sure, darling," Alyssa interrupted. "We'll figure it out, one step at a time." Lying there, I felt silent tears slide down my ruined face. They were out there, talking about me like I was some project to fix, a problem to solve. In that moment, something inside me broke. The warmth and hope I had always carried began to disappear, replaced by something cold and hard. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment my old self, the Audrey Griffin who was a loving wife, a hopeful mother-to-be, and an eternal optimist, started to fade. Something else, something darker and stronger, began to take her place. Coming home from the hospital felt like stepping into someone else's life. Everything looked the same. Our neat suburban house with its perfect lawn, the welcome mat Alyssa gave us as a housewarming gift, even the faint smell of Aiden's cologne in the entryway. But nothing felt right anymore. "I set up the guest bedroom downstairs," Aiden said, carrying my bag. "The doctor said stairs might be hard for a while." I noticed he wouldn't look directly at me. For weeks in the hospital, and he still couldn't meet my eyes. "Thanks," I muttered, my fingers brushing the bandages covering half my face. "I've invited Mom over for dinner," he added quickly. "She wants to help with your recovery plan." Of course she did. Alyssa Griffin never missed a chance to take charge, especially when it came to protecting her son's perfect life. The guest room felt cold and lifeless, like a hotel room. Aiden had cleared out all my things from our bedroom upstairs and arranged them here with robotic precision. My makeup vanity, useless now, sat in the corner with the mirror turned to face the wall. Do you need anything? Aiden asked from the doorway, phone in hand. I have a fewer calls to make, but I'm fine, I said, even though I wasn't. What was the point of saying otherwise? Alyssa arrived right at 5, as expected. She came armed with casseroles and plenty of opinions. I sat at the dining room table, watching Alyssa arrange flowers in a vase while Aiden poured wine. The doctor said the scarring might get better over time, Aiden said, avoiding eye contact with either of us. Well, there are always options, Alyssa replied, her voice overly cheerful. I know an excellent plastic surgeon in the city. Very discreet. I stared at my untouched plate, pushing food around with my fork. The insurance won't cover cosmetic procedures, I said quietly. Oh, darling, Alyssa said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. We have to think about Aiden's position at the firm. Image is everything in corporate marketing. My fork slipped from my hand, clattering onto the plate. My face is an image problem, Mother? I asked sharply. Audrey, Aiden warned, but Alyssa carried on as if she hadn't heard. I'm just being practical, she said. Aiden has worked so hard to build his career. And now, with all the complications from the accident, she dabbed her lips with a napkin. Well, sometimes life forces us to make hard choices. Complications. The word felt like poison in my mouth. You mean losing the babies? Aiden froze, his wine glass halfway to his lips. We hadn't talked about the pregnancy since the hospital. He didn't even know I had planned to surprise him with the news that day. Audrey, he started, but I cut him off. Did you tell her about the baby, Aiden? Or just about your wife's ruined face? Alyssa gasped, her hand flying to her throat. A baby, she whispered. It doesn't matter now, Aiden said quickly, standing up. What matters is moving forward. Mother's right. We need to think practically. I looked at them both. My husband, who couldn't meet my eyes, and his mother, who wouldn't stop staring at my bandages. The perfect son and his perfect mother already planning my perfect recovery. I think I need to lie down, I said, pushing back from the table. Of course, dear, Alyssa called after me. We'll figure everything out. In the guest room, their voices carried through the wall, muffled but clear enough. Poor thing, Alyssa was saying. But Aiden, you're still young. There will be other chances for children. Once everything is settled. Mom, please, Aiden said, sounding tired. I'm just saying, you need to think about your future. Both of your futures. I touched the bandages on my face, feeling the rough gauze where smooth skin used to be. I thought about our wedding day, when Aiden used to say I looked like an angel. Now he couldn't even look at me. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Griffin, my name is Maxime Cressy. I'm the father of the young man who caused your accident. Please, I need to speak with you. I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the screen. Through the wall, I could still hear Aiden and Alyssa planning my life without me. Something shifted inside me. Not quite hope, but something stronger, something closer to purpose. I typed back a single word. When? For weeks after I'd come home, I found Aiden's whiskey bottle hidden behind the cleaning supplies under the kitchen sink. It was already half empty. I wouldn't have noticed if I hadn't heard him stumbling around at 4 a.m., talking on his phone in what he thought was a whisper. The bandages had come off the day before, and I avoided mirrors now, but I couldn't avoid hearing Aiden's late-night conversations. You should have seen her face today, he slurred to someone, laughing softly. Like that movie, you know, Two-Face from Batman. There was a pause, followed by more drunken laughter. I know, I shouldn't joke, but man, you try living with it. I stood in the dark kitchen, holding his hidden whiskey bottle, and felt something break deep inside me. The next morning, Aiden acted like everything was normal. He kissed me on the unscarred side of my face before heading to work. Big presentation today, he said, adjusting his tie. Don't wait up. I waited until his car drove away before heading upstairs to our bedroom. I hadn't been up there since coming home, respecting his unspoken rule of keeping me out of sight in the guest room. Everything was exactly as I'd left it the morning of the accident, except for one thing. My old art supplies were missing from the closet. I found them in the garage, buried under Christmas decorations. The wooden box still had my name carved into it, a wedding gift from my grandmother. Inside, the brushes lay untouched, along with the expensive oil paints Aiden had once bought me when I mentioned wanting to paint again. You should focus on more practical things, Alyssa had said back then. Aiden needs a wife, not an artist. I set up the easel in the guest room, facing the window. Morning light poured across the canvas as I mixed colors, letting muscle memory take over. Red for anger, black for grief, yellow for the hope I used to feel. The brush moved on its own, creating something raw and powerful. Hours passed without me noticing. When the front door opened and closed, I heard Aiden's footsteps pause outside my door. "Mother's here for dinner," he called. I didn't respond, adding another streak of red to the canvas. The door opened. "Audrey, what are you?" Aiden stopped mid-sentence. "What is that supposed to be?" I stepped back from the painting. It was a woman's face, split down the middle. One side was flawless and perfect. The other was distorted, fractured, with a wine glass pressed to smiling lips. "It's you," Alyssa said from behind him, her voice sharp. "Or rather, what you've become." I looked at Aiden as his face turned pale. "I call it two-face," I said quietly. "Funny, right?" Aiden's mouth opened, but no words came out. His eyes, though, betrayed him. "Don't you understand?" I asked softly, though I already knew the answer. "I heard you last night, Aiden. And the night before that. And the night before that," I said calmly. Alyssa quickly stepped between us. "Audrey, Aiden has been under so much stress. If you could just try to understand." "Understand what?" I snapped, turning to face them fully. I saw them both flinch. That my husband makes jokes about my scars? That he hides bottles all over the house? That he can't even sleep in the same room as me anymore? "That's not fair," Aiden protested. "I'm trying to..." "To what?" I interrupted. "Keep up appearances?" I pointed to the painting. "Is this the kind of appearance you want?" Alyssa stiffened, her voice cold. "Perhaps this outburst is a sign you need professional help." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that made them both step back. "Professional help? Like that plastic surgeon you keep pushing? The one who can fix Aiden's image problems?" "Audrey, please," Aiden said, reaching for me. I stepped away. "Don't worry," I said, picking up my brush again. "I'm already working on fixing everything." They left the room, whispering to each other. I turned back to my canvas, adding the final touch, a faint text message in the background. "Tomorrow at 3. I'll explain everything. Maxime Cressy." I stepped back and studied my work. Both sides of the face in the painting were smiling, but for very different reasons. Tomorrow, I'd meet the father of the man who destroyed my life. Tomorrow, everything would change. The cafe Maxime Cressy chose was exactly what I expected. Quiet, expensive, and far from anywhere Aiden or Alyssa might go. I wore a scarf partially covering my face. It drew less attention than the medical mask I'd gotten used to wearing in public. Maxime stood as I approached the table. I recognized the guilt in his eyes immediately. I'd seen it in the mirror enough lately. The look of someone haunted by what they couldn't change. "Mrs. Griffin," he said softly. "Thank you for coming." "Audrey," I corrected as I sat down. "Your son, he's in rehab?" Maxime's hands tightened around his coffee cup.
He was.
The accident happened after he left his third facility. I should have seen it coming. A waitress approached, hesitating when she saw my scarf before forcing a polite smile. I ordered black coffee and waited for her to leave before speaking again. "Why did you want to meet?" Maxime pulled a folder from his bag and slid it across the table. "These are brochures from the top reconstructive surgeons in the country. I've already spoken with Dr. Isaac in Jacksonville. He's willing to take your case." I stared at the glossy pages filled with before and after photos of smiling patients. "Insurance won't cover it," I said flatly. "I'm not talking about insurance," Maxime said, his voice cracking. "I'm offering to pay for everything. It's the least I can do." "I can do this after what my son," Maxime began, but I cut him off. "Why?" The word came out sharper than I meant. "Because I failed him," Maxime said simply. "And in failing him, I failed you too. Money can't fix everything. but it can fix this. He gestured vaguely toward my face. I opened the brochure, scanning Dr. Isaac's credentials. The cost listed made my stomach twist. It was more than Aiden earned in a year. Your husband doesn't know you're here, Maxime said. It wasn't a question. No. Good. He leaned in closer. Because there's something else you need to know. I gripped my coffee cup as he continued. The night of the accident, my son wasn't alone in the car. My chest tightened, but I stayed silent, waiting. There was a woman with him, Maxime said, his voice heavy. She's someone's wife. They'd been meeting at the Golden Leaf Hotel every Saturday for months. The Golden Leaf. The same place where Aiden had his so-called weekly client meetings. The woman survived. Maxime went on. No injuries. She left the scene before the police arrived. My son was too drunk to remember her name, but he remembered where she worked. He slid a paper across the table. I glanced at it, feeling my stomach churn. Griffin Marketing Associates. You're lying, I whispered. I wish I were, Maxime said, his expression grim. For both our sakes. He pulled out his phone and showed me a grainy security camera image. A woman hurried through a hotel lobby, followed by a man in a gray suit. A very familiar suit. Aiden, I murmured, my voice barely audible. Why are you showing me this? Because you deserve to know the whole truth, Maxime said. And because I'm offering you a choice. He tapped the brochures on the table. Dr. Isaac can do the surgery next month. He can make you look exactly like you did before.
He paused.
Or he can make you look like someone else. Someone Aiden and his friend wouldn't recognize. I thought about Aiden's late-night phone calls, his cruel jokes, the way he avoided looking at me. I thought about Alyssa's constant hints about divorce and fresh starts. Why would I want that? I asked quietly. Maxime's smile was sad but knowing. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't confrontation. It's making them live with their guilt while you move on. While you become someone stronger. I touched the edge of my scarf, feeling the rough scars underneath. When does Dr. Isaac need an answer? Take your time. Maxime stood, leaving a business card beside the brochures. But remember, this isn't just about fixing what's broken. It's about choosing who you want to be. I sat there long after he left, staring at the security camera photo of Aiden next to an unfamiliar woman. My heart raced, my emotions tangled in anger, betrayal, and something I hadn't felt in weeks, clarity. Finally, I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Maxime. I choose someone new. His reply came almost instantly. Welcome to your second chance, Audrey. I walked home slowly, thinking about what to pack, what to leave behind, and how to disappear completely. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't ruining someone else's life. It's rebuilding your own. Jacksonville felt like a different world. Dr. Isaac's private clinic was on the top floor of a sleek building made of glass and chrome. Everything about it felt quiet and discreet. I told Aiden I was visiting my aunt in Kentucky for a few months to heal emotionally. He seemed relieved, happy to have an excuse not to deal with me. The changes will be significant, Dr. Isaac said, studying my file, but subtle enough to look natural. The goal isn't to make a new person. It's to reveal who you could have been. I looked at the digital mock-ups on his tablet. The woman in the after images wasn't me, but she wasn't a stranger either. She was who I might have been in another life, one where Aiden's mistress hadn't been in that car. How long until I can? I hesitated, unsure how to finish the sentence. Return? Revenge? Start over? For months for full recovery, Dr. Isaac said kindly. Maxime mentioned you'd be staying at his apartment during the process. I nodded. Maxime's San Marco apartment had become my safe place. It was filled with his late wife's art collection and rarely used now that he spent most of his time at his Connecticut home. The first surgery was scheduled for tomorrow. That night, I sat in Maxime's apartment, watching the city lights twinkle like stars. My phone buzzed. It was Aiden. How's your aunt? His voice sounded slightly slurred. Saturday night, Golden Leaf Hotel night. Fine, I replied, my fingers brushing the surgical consent forms on the coffee table. How's work?
Busy.
Listen, Mother wants to know when you're coming home. She's worried about appearances. Of course she was. I pictured them at their usual dinner, talking about how to handle me. The damaged goods? I need time, I said, the lie slipping out easily now.
Right.
Well, take care of yourself. He hung up before I could say anything else. A moment later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Maxime. Ready for tomorrow? I started to reply yes, but stopped when another message appeared. It was from an unknown number. Are you sure you want to know the truth about that night? My hands trembled as I typed back.
Who is this?
Someone who was there. Someone who knows what really happened. Meet me at Jacksonville Zoo and Gardens. Midnight. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. It could be a trap. Or it could be her, the woman from the hotel. The smart choice was to ignore it, to stick with my plan and go through with the surgery. But something deep inside me needed to know. At 12:15, I took a cab to Jacksonville Zoo and Gardens. The air was cool, and the Hudson River shimmered like black silk under the moonlight. A woman sat alone on a bench, her face hidden beneath a hoodie. "Mrs. Griffin," she said softly as I approached. I walked closer, and the woman pulled back her hood, revealing a face I knew from office party photos on Aiden's desk. "Audrey," I said, recognizing her. "Audrey from accounting." She looked at me, her eyes full of guilt. "He wasn't supposed to be there that night," she said quietly. "At the hotel. He was following me." "Suspicious?" I asked, the pieces starting to fall into place. She nodded. "When he saw who I was meeting, his client's wife," I said, finishing the thought. Audrey let out a bitter laugh. "Aiden caught us together. He was drunk and angry. He started making threats about exposing everything." She paused, her voice shaking. "That's when what?" I pressed. "When he called his friend. The guy who hit your car. He asked him to scare his cheating client's wife. Follow her car, freak her out a little." Her voice cracked. "But the guy was high, confused. He followed the wrong car." "He followed you?" The world spun around me. Aiden arranged the accident. Not yours. He didn't mean to." Audrey stood up, backing away. "I just thought you should know before you disappear." I watched her hurry off, my mind racing. All this time, I'd been planning to start over because of Aiden's lies and betrayal. But now I knew the truth. He wasn't just unfaithful. He was the reason I'd lost everything. My phone buzzed. It was Maxime. "Surgery prep starts at 6 a.m. Are you ready?" I stared at my reflection in the window of a passing car. Tomorrow, I wouldn't just become someone new. I'd become someone Aiden would never see coming. "Ready," I typed back. "But we need to change the plan." 4 months after my surgery, I stood outside our house in the rain. Unrecognizable. My new face, beautiful but completely different, felt like armor. In my bag were the divorce papers, sharp and final, like weapons. I had planned this moment perfectly. It was Saturday evening, the night Aiden would be home from his client meeting at the Golden Leaf, and Alyssa would be over for their weekly dinner, plotting my absence from their lives. My key still worked. I stepped inside quietly, hearing their voices coming from the dining room. "The lawyers say if she doesn't respond soon, we can move forward with the annulment," Alyssa was saying. "Really, Aiden," she added, "it's for the best." That accident was a blessing in disguise. I stepped into the doorway, and they froze mid-conversation. "Hello, Aiden," I said calmly. He stared at me, blinking in confusion. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "I'm Michael Cressy," I said, using the name Maxime, and I had chosen. Maxime Cressy's niece. "I'm here about Bianca Griffin." His wine glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. Alyssa stood quickly, her instincts kicking in to manage the situation. "Whatever this is about," she said, her voice firm, "we can discuss it privately." "Can we?" I asked, stepping forward. I placed the divorce papers on the table. "Like you discussed arranging the accident that scarred your wife's face?" The color drained from Aiden's face. "I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. "Audrey from accounting does," I said, holding his gaze as the truth hit him like a slap. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Aiden's voice echoed through the room. "Follow her car, scare her a little." "That's not, I never meant," Aiden stammered, his face pale. You never meant for it to be me, I said, my voice calm and steady. Your pregnant wife, instead of your client's cheating spouse. Alyssa gasped. Pregnant? Oh, he didn't tell you that part? I said, turning to her. About the grandchild you lost because your perfect son wanted to teach someone a lesson? Aiden whispered my name, finally looking past the new face and seeing something familiar in my eyes. I pulled out another document and placed it on the table. This is a police report naming you as an accessory to the accident, I said. Audrey's sworn statement is attached. I stepped closer. Sign the divorce papers, I said softly, or everyone will find out the kind of man you really are. Aiden lunged for the police report, but his foot slipped on the spilled wine. He crashed into the china cabinet, glass shattering around him as he fell. Aiden! Alyssa cried, rushing to help him, but he pushed her away. Blood dripped from a cut on his hand as he got to his feet. You can't prove anything, he hissed, but his eyes were full of panic. Can't I replied, stepping back toward the door. Maxime Cressy's legal team would disagree. They're very eager to make amends for his son's part in this, especially now that they know who really orchestrated it. Wait, Aiden called as I reached the door.
Please, I'll sign.
Just don't tell anyone. Like you didn't tell anyone about our babies? I said, my voice cold. Like you didn't tell anyone you planned the accident? He looked at me, his face crumbling. I loved you, he said weakly. No, I said, touching my new face. You loved what I looked like. There's a difference. I placed the divorce papers on the table and walked out into the rain. Behind me, I heard Alyssa's shocked sobs and Aiden's frantic explanations, but I didn't look back. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Maxime. Is it done? I stared at the screen, unable to answer. The victory felt hollow, like ashes in my mouth. I had what I came for. Aiden's signature on the divorce papers, his perfect life falling apart, but it didn't feel like a win. I walked past the spot where Aiden used to park, where he'd kiss me goodbye each morning. Past the garden where we had once dreamed of building a nursery. Past all the plans and love that had died the night he chose revenge over me. Another text lit up my phone, this time from an unknown number. You're not the only one he hurt. There are others. We should talk. I sat in my car, the rain drumming on the roof, staring at the message. I thought exposing Aiden would feel like the end of something, but maybe it was just the start. The real question was, how far was I willing to go? The art gallery was buzzing with San Marcos elite, all here to see the work of the mysterious new artist everyone was talking about. My paintings lined the walls, faces twisted in pain and betrayal, beauty rising from darkness. Each one was signed with my new name, Michael Cressy. I adjusted my dress, still not used to the way my new face and identity fit me. Then I saw him.
Aiden.
He was standing in front of my centerpiece, a painting of a woman's face split between light and shadow, a wine glass reflecting flames. Remarkable work, a voice said beside me. I turned to see a man with kind eyes and paint-stained hands. I'm Colton Burpo, the gallery owner. He introduced himself. Claire, I replied, my focus slipping back to Aiden. He was staring at the painting's title, Saturday Nights at the Golden Leaf. Your pieces speak to transformation, Colton said, studying my work. Pain becoming power. Very personal. Before I could respond, Aiden's voice cut through the crowd. Where did you get your inspiration? His eyes were on me now, recognition flickering across his face. It had been 4 months since I'd handed him the divorce papers. He looked thinner, his once perfect suit hanging loose on his frame. Life experience, I said, meeting his gaze. Some people wear masks. I paint them. Audrey, he whispered, my real name slipping out like a prayer or a curse. Colton looked between us, sensing something was wrong. You know each other? No, I said firmly. Not anymore. Aiden grabbed my arm. We need to talk. Let go, I said, my voice cutting through the room. Heads turned to watch. Everything you took from me, he hissed. My reputation, my mother's respect, my position at the firm. Was revenge worth it? Was Saturday night at the Golden Leaf worth it? I pulled my arm free, staring him down. Was trying to hurt your client's wife worth what happened to me? To our baby? Colton stepped forward, protective, but I held up my hand. You want to know about inspiration, Aiden? I said, my voice steady. Look around. Every piece here tells a story. Stories about masks and lies. About men who destroy what they claim to love. I never meant to, he started. To hit my cars? I cut him off. No, you meant to hit someone else's. That makes it better. The room had gone silent, the weight of our confrontation filling the space. In the corner, I saw Maxime Cressy watching, calm but purposeful. Beside him stood Audrey from accounting, her face pale but determined. You're not the only one with stories to tell, I said, my voice echoing in the quiet room. I continued, my voice steady. Audrey's here. So are 4 other women from the office. They all have stories about Saturday nights, about threats, about accidents. Aiden's face turned pale. You can't prove anything. Actually, Maxime said, stepping forward, we can. My son may have been driving drunk that night, but the police are very interested in who told him to follow that car, and why. Aiden looked around the room, his gaze landing on the crowd, the paintings, the witnesses. You set this up, he said, his voice trembling. The gallery, the paintings, everything. No, Aiden, I said coldly. You set this up years ago, when you decided other people's lives were yours to ruin. Aiden lunged toward the centerpiece painting, but Colton moved quickly, stepping in front of him. Aiden's fist hit Colton's jaw instead of the canvas. Security rushed in, grabbing Aiden and restraining him as he shouted about lies and betrayal. They let him out, his words fading into the buzz of the shocked crowd. Alyssa emerged, her flawless makeup streaked with tears. I never knew, she said softly, about any of it, the women, the accidents, the baby. Would it have mattered? I asked. My tone made her flinch, her eyes flicking to my paintings as if finally seeing herself in them. The enabler, the keeper of masks. I'm sorry, she whispered, but I was already turning away. Colton touched his bruised jaw, managing a small smile. Hell of an opening night. I should explain, I started. You don't owe me explanations, he said, gesturing to the paintings. Your art already tells the truth. The real question is, what story do you want to tell next? I looked around the gallery. At the paintings, once full of pain but now transformed into something beautiful. At the women Aiden had hurt, now standing tall. At Maxime's proud smile. At Colton's steady, understanding eyes. Something new, I said finally. Something that isn't about masks or revenge. I'd like to hear that story, Colton said softly. For the first time since the accident, I felt truly seen. Not for my old face or my new one, but for the person I was beneath them both. So would I replied. I was ready to begin again. 2 years later, I stood in my small studio apartment, surrounded by half-packed boxes and fresh paintings. These were different, no longer about masks or revenge. They captured healing, growth, and moments of unexpected joy, brought to life in color and light. On my desk sat a letter from Maxime, delivered earlier that morning. I had been too nervous to open it, but now felt like the right time. I unfolded the paper and began to read. Dear Audrey or Claire, you'll always be both to me now. My son came home yesterday, 5 months sober. He asked about you about the accident. I told him everything. About Aiden's manipulation, about your transformation, and about how your strength helped me find the courage to reconnect with him. He wants to apologize in person, but I told him that's your choice to make. Some scars need time to heal. Others teach us who we really are. Thank you for showing me that redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about painting a better future. Maxime. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Colton stood there, paint-stained hands holding coffee and bagels. Ready for moving day? He asked with a grin. Almost, I said, smiling back. I gestured at the mess around me. Just reading a letter for Maxime. Some good news, some unexpected news. I touched my face. It wasn't the one I was born with, nor the one Aiden had destroyed. It was something entirely my own now. His son wants to meet, I said softly. Colton sat down and began unpacking breakfast, giving me the quiet space I needed. That's what I loved about him. He understood the power of silence. After a while, he broke it gently. The gallery called. They want to know if you're ready to show your new series. I glanced at my latest paintings. They were different. No darkness, no hidden meanings. Just light breaking through clouds, hands reaching out, faces emerging from shadows into the dawn. I think I am, I said. I picked up my favorite piece, a self-portrait showing all 4 versions of myself. Not as masks, but as chapters in a longer story. This time, I added, under my real name. Which one?
Colton asked.
Both, I said, smiling. Bianca Claire Griffin. No more hiding. He smiled back, understanding the weight of what I had just said. And the meeting with Maxime's son, he asked. Maybe, I said, folding Maxime's letter carefully. Some stories need proper endings. My phone buzzed with a news alert. I opened it to find a headline about Aiden. He had pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges and several counts of harassment. The other women had come forward, each with their own stories of Saturday nights, threats, and accidents. Even Alyssa had testified against him. Colton glanced over my shoulder. You know, he said, your first show helped those women find their voices. They helped me find mine, too, I said, closing the article. I thought revenge would heal me, but it turns out telling the truth is what finally did. We spent the morning packing, carefully wrapping each painting. Colton handled them like treasures, not because of their value, but because they were pieces of my journey. Near sunset, we carried the last box to his truck. My new apartment was above his gallery, a space for both art and living. A place to begin again, he said with a smile. Oh, he added, reaching into his pocket, this came to the gallery yesterday. He handed me a small package. Inside was my old wedding ring, and a note from Alyssa. I kept this when Aiden threw it away. It belonged to his grandmother, but it should have been yours. Sell it, keep it, whatever brings you peace. I'm learning that's what matters most. I held the ring up to the fading light. Once it had represented everything I thought I wanted. Now, it was just a circle of metal, heavy with history, but powerless to hurt me anymore. What will you do with it? Colton asked. I smiled, an idea forming. I think I just found the centerpiece for my next show. Something about turning old pain into new beauty. He took my hand, the one that used to wear that ring, and kissed it softly. Ready to go home? He asked. Home. Not a place to hide, not a mask to wear, not a role to play. Just a space to be completely myself, scars, changes, strength, and all. Yes, I said, leaving the past behind one last time. I'm ready. My name's Lori, and I'm 31 years old. I live with my husband Nick and his family, his mother and father. Life here is hard for me. I have a condition called total mutism, which means I can't talk at all. This condition was triggered by stress, and unfortunately, living here only makes things worse. Today started like any other day. My sister-in-law burst into the room, shouting angrily. She looked at Nick and asked sharply, "Who's supposed to protect Lori?" Nick hesitated, unsure of what to say. Before he could get a word out, she slapped him across the face. "Don't just stand there saying, answer me," she yelled. Nick tried to respond, but she raised her hand again as if ready to hit him a third time. He quickly stammered, "It's me. I'm the one who should protect her. I'm sorry." I stood there silently, watching the scene unfold. I wanted to speak up, but I couldn't. I've lived like this for a long time now, unable to defend myself or even express my feelings. Sometimes I feel invisible, like I'm just a shadow in this house. Living with my in-laws is a struggle. My mother-in-law often reminds me how much of a burden I am. "You can't even talk," she'll say with frustration. "You're such an inconvenience. What kind of wife can't even communicate?" Her words hurt, but I don't have the ability to respond, so I simply lower my head and carry on. Tonight, like every night, I was in the kitchen preparing dinner. Cooking is one of the few things I can do to contribute, even if I never get any credit for it. My mother-in-law acts like she's the one doing everything. When Nick came home, she greeted him with a smile and said, "Oh, dinner's ready. Doesn't it smell amazing?" Nick smiled and said, "It smells great. Is it curry tonight? I'm so hungry." But then my mother-in-law added, "Don't let the smell fool you. You never know what's in it. I'd better taste it first, just to be safe." Her words stung. She always makes it seem like I can't be trusted, even with something as simple as cooking. Nick didn't say anything to defend me. He never does. He just sat down at the table and started eating after his mother gave her approval. I served everyone quietly, as usual, and then sat at the corner of the table, eating my own meal in silence. No one noticed me. No one thanked me. Sometimes I dream of leaving this house and starting over somewhere else. But where would I go? My parents passed away when I was young, and I have no other family to turn to. Without a voice, I can't get a job or live on my own. So, for now, I'm stuck here, enduring this life because I have no other choice. I would never put anything bad in the food. Why would I? But tonight, my mother-in-law decided to make a big scene again. "Oh no, what is this?" she exclaimed, glaring at the curry I made. "What's wrong with it?" Nick asked, concerned. "It's disgusting." "Nick, don't eat it," she shouted before flipping the entire plate of curry into the sink. Not stopping there, she grabbed the pot of curry and dumped that into the sink too. I froze, watching helplessly. She turned to me with a sharp look. "What's with that expression? Are you trying to tell me I'm wrong?" she snapped. "This food is terrible, obviously. No one should eat something like this." Then she sighed dramatically and said, "Poor Nick, having to put up with a wife who's such a terrible cook. I wish she could cook well, like me." Nick looked upset. "Mom, I was hungry. You shouldn't waste food like that." She ignored his frustration and said sweetly, "Oh, I know you're such a kind boy, Nick. But this isn't my fault. It's Lori's. She's the one who wasted all the food by cooking something so awful." Her words stung. I wasted food? I thought to myself. How can she blame me when she's the one who threw it away? She clapped her hands together suddenly, as if a brilliant idea had struck her. "Let's order Nick's favorite sushi tonight." "That's a great idea," Nick said hesitantly. "Oh, but I won't order any for you, Lori," she added, her tone sharp. This wasn't the first time, nor would it be the last. Days like this happened over and over again. I kept quiet because I had no other choice. My condition, total mutism, left me unable to defend myself. One day, after weeks of enduring this treatment, I suddenly fell ill. My body couldn't take the stress anymore. The one saving grace in my life was my sister-in-law, Sydney. She didn't live with us but visited me every once in a while, and I looked forward to her visits more than anything else.
Hello, Lori.
"How are you feeling?" Sydney asked gently as she entered my room. She was always kind and understanding, the only person in the house who seemed to care about me. I smiled weakly. Sydney sat beside me, her presence a comforting reminder that not everyone in the family treated me badly. "I hope you feel better soon," she said warmly. "I really hope you'll be able to speak again one day." Then she pulled something out of her bag. "Oh, by the way, I brought this for you." It was a wedding invitation. She was getting married. I couldn't speak, so I smiled brightly and clapped my hands for her. It was my way of congratulating her. "Thank you, Lori," she said, beaming. "I met a wonderful man at work. I really want you to come to the wedding. Please make sure you're there, okay?" Her words touched me deeply. Sydney had taken time out of her busy life to hand me this invitation personally, and she genuinely wanted me to be part of her special day. That evening, however, my mother-in-law was furious when she found out. "Of course, we'd be invited to Sydney's wedding," she fumed. "But why on earth would she invite Lori? It doesn't make sense." I overheard her words from my room, and they stung just as much as the other things she said about me. Even a happy moment like this couldn't escape her cruelty. But no matter what she said, I decided I would go to the wedding. For once, I wanted to feel included and part of something special. Sydney's kindness reminded me that not everyone thought of me as worthless. I guess it's because she's my wife, Nick said with a shrug. But it's not like she had to be invited. My mother-in-law chimed in, her tone sharp. Just because they're relatives doesn't mean they all need to come. Isn't it normal to invite only the important ones? Nick nodded, agreeing with her. Yeah, I guess so. She's just too nice. That's the problem, my mother-in-law continued. She probably felt she had no choice but to invite her. Honestly, she's too sweet for her own good. Unlike my mother-in-law or husband, Sydney, my sister-in-law, is nothing like them. She's kind and caring, more like my father-in-law, who is calm and fair. She's always treated me with respect, and for that I'm grateful. The day of Sydney's wedding finally came. I was excited to celebrate this special day for her, but while I was in the bathroom, my mother-in-law and Nick left without me. When I came out, I realized they were gone. They didn't even bother to tell me they were leaving. My heart sank. I couldn't understand why they would treat me this way, especially on such an important day. As I sat in silence, a thought crossed my mind. Why am I still holding on to them? My illness, total mutism, has made me believe I need them to survive, but maybe I don't. There are support centers and organizations that help people with disabilities. Perhaps I could find a job, even without being able to talk. Yes, I'll get a divorce. The thought brought me a sense of relief. I couldn't keep living like this, enduring their constant cruelty. But before I left this toxic family for good, I wanted to celebrate Sydney's wedding. She had been so kind to me, and I couldn't miss her special day. Determined, I grabbed my bag and headed to the train station. Once there, I took a cab. I typed the wedding venue's address into my phone and showed it to the driver. He nodded and drove me there. When I arrived, I found a seat quietly among the guests. As soon as my mother-in-law noticed me, her face twisted in annoyance. She rolled her eyes, and Nick laughed under his breath. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. I looked at her silently, unable to respond. "What's that look for?" she snapped. "You can't talk, so now you're giving me some kind of attitude? You've got such a twisted personality. You weren't even supposed to be here, so we left you behind. And yet here you are, ruining the day. What a pain." Before she could continue, a relative nearby intervened. "Oh, come on, that's enough. She's here now. Let's all focus on celebrating Sydney's new life. Look, the ceremony is about to start." I ignored my mother-in-law's cruel words and focused on the reason I was there. Sydney. She looked stunning in her wedding dress, her face glowing with happiness. Seeing her so radiant made me smile. This was her day, and I wouldn't let anyone ruin it for her. Not even my in-laws. Sitting there, I made up my mind. This was the last time I would endure their cruelty. After the wedding, I would take steps to build a new life for myself, one where I could find peace and dignity. But for now, I pushed those thoughts aside and focused on Sydney's joy. Her happiness was worth it. As I watched my sister-in-law during the wedding, I couldn't help but admire her. She looked so beautiful and happy that, for a moment, I forgot about my mother-in-law and husband. The warmth and joy in the room made me feel at ease, even if just for a little while. After the candlelight ceremony, there was a short break, so I decided to approach Sydney, my sister-in-law. I smiled at her and clapped my hands softly to show my admiration. She noticed me immediately and smiled warmly. "Lori, thank you so much for coming today," she said kindly. I took out my phone and typed a message, showing it to her. She read it and nodded enthusiastically. "Of course. Let's take a picture together," she said, her voice full of excitement. Sydney is such a kind and understanding person. She doesn't need me to speak to know how I feel. She always seems to understand me perfectly, even without words. Her warmth and empathy are things I've rarely experienced in this family. It made me happy to share this moment with her. As we talked, some of her friends came over to the table. I bowed politely and returned to my seat, not wanting to take up too much of her time. But as I sat down, my mother-in-law appeared in front of me with a glass of wine in her hand. She looked straight into my eyes and then, without warning, poured the wine upside down onto my chair. I stared at her in shock. What is she doing? She smirked and said mockingly, "Oh no, I spilled my wine. What a shame.
I guess there's no seat for you now.
You should just go home." Before I could react, some staff members rushed over to bring me a new chair. But my mother-in-law waved them away.
Don't bother. She's leaving anyway.
"Go back to your other tasks," she said coldly. My husband stood nearby, laughing quietly. He didn't even try to stop her or defend me. I felt humiliated and angry. All I wanted was to celebrate Sydney's special day. That was the only reason I came. I realized I had done what I came for, and there was no reason for me to stay any longer. I turned my back on them and started walking toward the exit. Before I could leave, I felt a hand grab my arm. I turned to see Sydney standing there, her face full of concern. "Wait a minute," she said softly. Seeing the desperate look in her eyes, I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. They started flowing uncontrollably. "It's okay," she said, pulling me into a gentle hug. "I'm so sorry, Lori. I didn't realize what was happening before." She let go of me and turned her attention to my mother-in-law and Nick. Her expression changed from gentle to furious as she marched up to them. Without hesitation, she slapped Nick hard across the face. "Nick, you're supposed to protect Lori," she yelled. Nick stammered, But Sydney didn't let him finish. She slapped him again. "Don't you dare say, Answer me. Who should protect Lori's?" Nick looked down, his voice shaking. "Me, it's me."
I'm sorry.
"I'm so sorry." "That's right. It's you." "Then what were you doing just now?" "Laughing while your wife was being humiliated," she shouted. Nick mumbled something, but Sydney didn't wait for him to finish. She slapped him again, this time on his other cheek. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was laughing. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry." Nick cried, his tears falling as he apologized. I watched the scene in disbelief, overwhelmed by Sydney's fierce defense of me. For the first time, someone had stood up for me in this family, and it gave me the courage to believe I deserved better. I couldn't help but laugh a little at my sister-in-law Sydney's relentless scolding of Nick and my mother-in-law. But while I found it amusing, Sydney was completely serious. She wasn't just angry. She was standing up for me in a way no one ever had. Every word she said for my sake, and I felt deeply grateful. She was saying everything I had been holding inside for so long but couldn't express myself. I couldn't raise my voice, much less my hand, against my in-laws, but Sydney had no such limitations. She didn't hesitate. Nick tried to lighten the mood. "Oh, come on, there's no need to be so angry," he said with a nervous laugh. "I was just being a little playful, right, Lori?" I stared at him without reacting. Playful? How could he call what they'd done to me playful? Sydney's voice cut through the tension. "Playful? Lori can't even talk anymore because of you too. Did you ever stop to think about what you've done to hers?" My mother-in-law shot me a nasty glare, as if daring me to speak. Of course, I couldn't, but Sydney didn't let her off the hook. Sydney laughed bitterly. "Don't even try it. It's obvious you're the ones at fault here. Just look at the situation. It's all you're doing, and now you're trying to act innocent. You're horrible, both of you." Then she turned to me, her tone softening. "Lori, I'll get you a new seat. Please stay until the end of the ceremony. I'll handle these two." True to her word, Sydney had the wedding staff escort my mother-in-law and Nick out of the venue. "I'm sorry for the disturbance," she said to the guests, her voice calm yet firm. "Now that the troublemakers are gone, let's all enjoy the rest of the ceremony." I didn't return to the house after the wedding. Sydney acted quickly, and before the day was over, she had made arrangements for me. She contacted a real estate agent she knew and found me an apartment. It was company housing connected to her husband's business, and she offered it to me rent-free. After confirming my intentions, I told Sydney I wanted a divorce. She didn't hesitate to support me. She found me a lawyer and helped me through every step of the process. With her help, the divorce went smoothly. Sydney also made sure I got what I deserved. She pushed for alimony from both Nick and my mother-in-law. According to the lawyer, they had to pay more than the usual amount because their actions were directly responsible for my illness. Their mistreatment had caused me so much harm, and Sydney made sure they were held accountable. For months after the divorce, my life started to change for the better. While there is no cure for my condition, the symptoms became more manageable. Without the constant stress and cruelty of my in-laws, I began to heal, both physically and emotionally. Sydney didn't just save me from a toxic environment, she gave me a new chance at life. I'll always be grateful to her for standing by me when no one else would. Thanks to her, I'm finally free to live a life of my own choosing. I don't know when my symptoms might return, but for now, I feel free. The main source of my stress, my husband and mother-in-law, is no longer in my life. With them gone, I hope the symptoms of my illness never come back. They wanted to see me to apologize, but I refused. I don't ever want to see their faces again or hear their voices. They caused me too much pain, and I've decided to move forward without them. "Lori, are you ready?" my sister-in-law Sydney called out. "Yes, I'm ready, sister," I replied, giving her a nod. "Okay, let's go," she said with a smile. I'm starting a new chapter of my life with Sydney and her husband. They've offered me an amazing opportunity. I'm moving to New York to work as a nanny and helper for their family. Sydney is 4 months pregnant, and once the baby is born, she plans to return to work. She needed someone she could trust to help with the baby, and she asked if I would take the job. I agreed without hesitation. Sydney's kindness has changed my life, and I'm excited to support her and her growing family. "I'll make sure you're registered as an employee at my husband's company," she had said when we first talked about the idea. "That way, we can apply for your visa when the time comes." "Thank you so much," I replied, feeling overwhelmed with gratitude. Looking back, I never imagined my life would take such a turn. Just a few months ago, I felt trapped and hopeless. Now, I'm filled with excitement for the future. I can't wait to start this new journey, and for the first time in a long time, I feel happy. Sydney often tells me how awful my mother-in-law was. "That woman is pure evil, Lori. She pushed you so far that you couldn't even speak anymore." And Nick, how pathetic he is, just standing by and laughing while she mistreated you.
She's right.
My mother-in-law's cruelty and my husband's failure to defend me broke me. But Sydney's kindness and support have helped me heal. I'm so grateful for her. Without her, I don't know where I'd be today. As we prepare to leave, I feel a sense of peace I haven't felt in years. The worst part of my life is behind me now. I have a fresh start and the chance to build a life filled with purpose and joy. "I hope you'll spend the rest of your life smiling, Lori," Sydney said one day, her words warm and sincere. I smiled back at her, feeling that, for once, it was truly possible. If my story teaches anything, it's that even in the darkest moments, there can be light. Sometimes, all it takes is one kind person to make a difference. For me, that person was Sydney. I'll forever be grateful for her love and support. Thank you for reading my story. If you liked it, please consider subscribing to the channel. See you next time. I sat at the edge of my bed, clutching an old photo album filled with snapshots of James and me throughout the years. It was supposed to bring comfort, but all I could feel was the weight of everything we'd been through. At 28, I never thought our biggest challenge would come from his mother, Sarah. She wasn't just a difficult person. Her presence cast a shadow over our relationship, leaving me questioning how much more I could endure. James had always been my high school sweetheart. His boyish charm and unwavering ambition had captivated me from the moment we met. Even when we went to colleges in different states, we managed to keep our bond strong. But even back then, Sarah loomed in the background. She had disapproved of me before we'd even met properly. I learned quickly how overbearing and fiercely protective she was of her 2 sons. To her, no one, especially me, was good enough. I flipped through a page in the album and stopped at a photo of a much younger James in his tuxedo. My heart clenched as I pointed to the blank space beside it. "Do you remember prom?" I asked, unable to hide the edge in my voice. James sighed deeply, sitting beside me. "I remember. Mom's Venice trip. She thought she was doing something special for me." The guilt in his tone was unmistakable, though frustration was woven into it as well. I scoffed, the memory still fresh. Special? She planned that trip to ruin our prom date, James. You begged her to cancel it. I was a kid, he said softly, his voice almost apologetic. I didn't know how to stand up to her then. I closed the album with a sigh, the sting of that moment still sharp. The Venice trip was just one example of Sarah's many attempts to sabotage us. From the day James brought me home to meet his family, she had made her disdain for me clear. She dismissed me with backhanded compliments and pointed remarks about my upbringing, my appearance, and even my ambitions. Over the years, her behavior only became more aggressive. I wasn't alone in dealing with her controlling ways. James's older brother, John, had endured it too. He'd married Emma, a strong-willed woman who refused to let Sarah dictate their lives. The tension between them had grown until John decided to distance himself from Sarah altogether. Emma became a lifeline for me during those times, someone who truly understood what it was like to navigate Sarah's toxic presence. She reminded me that standing up to Sarah was possible, even if it wasn't easy. One evening, after yet another exhausting call from Sarah, I turned to James, my frustration bubbling over. "Why do you always let her do this?" I asked, pacing the kitchen. He leaned against the counter, rubbing his temples. "You know how she is, Emily. She thinks she's helping." "Helping?" I said incredulously. "By criticizing every choice we make? By belittling me at every turn?" James looked defensive, his tone softening. "I'm not saying it's right, but she's my mom. She worries about me."
She doesn't worry about you, I snapped.
"She worries about losing control over you." The argument ended there, but the tension lingered. I knew James loved his mother, but I was starting to see that his loyalty was blinding him to the damage she was causing. Even so, I kept trying to keep the peace. At family gatherings, I bit my tongue and smiled politely while Sarah made endless critiques. When it came to planning our wedding, I made the mistake of including her, hoping it would help her feel involved. Instead, it turned into a nightmare. Sarah called my vintage theme tacky and tried to override every decision James and I made. The final straw came on our wedding day. Sarah showed up in a white, lacy dress that could have easily been mistaken for a bridal gown. Furious, I didn't even have time to confront her. My maid of honor and best friend stepped in, offering Sarah a pale blue dress I had secretly purchased for this exact scenario. Sarah accepted it begrudgingly, claiming she had no idea her dress would cause an issue. It was moments like these that tested my patience, but I endured them for James's sake. Over time, I began finding my voice. I started setting boundaries with Sarah, though she ignored most of them. James, despite his love for me, struggled to confront her fully. He rationalized her actions, saying her controlling tendencies were rooted in love. I wasn't convinced. Everything changed when I found out I was pregnant. James and I were overjoyed. I imagined a bright future for our growing family, and for a brief moment, I hoped the news might soften Sarah. James insisted on telling her immediately, even though I hesitated. Her reaction crushed that hope. "A baby? Already? Don't you think you're rushing things?" she said sharply. Her skepticism quickly turned into outright hostility. She accused me of trapping James with a child and even questioned whether the baby was his. The words stunned me. While her dramatic outbursts weren't new, this was a new low. James tried to defend me, but I could see her words had left a mark on him too. For weeks, Sarah bombarded us with calls, alternating between scathing insults and tearful pleas. I hoped she would come around, but her behavior only escalated. Then one evening, Sarah arrived at our home unannounced. She carried a bag of baby gifts and wore a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. James seemed relieved, interpreting her gesture as a sign of acceptance. I wasn't so sure. "Emily, dear," she said sweetly, handing me a mug of tea later that evening. "I made this for you. It'll help you relax. You should be careful with all the stress. It's not good for the baby." I accepted the mug hesitantly, my instincts screaming that something wasn't right. Sarah sat across from me, her eyes watching every movement as James sipped his own tea. Max, our playful retriever, trotted into the room. As I lifted the mug to my lips, Max sniffed it curiously. Before I could react, he knocked it over, lapping at the spilled tea on the floor.
Max,
I exclaimed, pulling him away. But it was too late. For a moment, Sarah's expression faltered, her smile slipping. She quickly recovered, forcing a laugh. Oh, silly dog. My heart raced as I cleaned up the mess, unease prickling at the back of my mind. At first, Max seemed fine, but within an hour, he began showing signs of distress. He whimpered and staggered, leaving James and me no choice but to rush him to the vet. As we waited anxiously in the clinic, the vet's somber words confirmed my worst fears. "We found traces of a substance in Max's system," he explained. "It could have been ingested from something he ate or drank. He's stable for now, but this could have been serious." A chill ran down my spine. I thought about the tea, Sarah's strange behavior, and the peculiar carton I'd seen earlier in the kitchen. Could it be? When we returned home, I confronted Sarah. "What did you put in the teas?" I demanded, my voice shaking. Her face turned pale, but she quickly masked it with indignation. "How dare you accuse me of something like that?" James, standing between us, looked confused and torn. "Mom, what's going on?" I didn't back down. "Max could have died, Sarah. I want the truth." The room fell into a heavy silence, the weight of my accusation hanging in the air. "I did nothing wrong," she finally said, her voice trembling. But I wasn't convinced. And, judging by James's expression, neither was he. The seeds of doubt had been planted. I couldn't shake the unease gnawing at me after Max's close call. The tea, Sarah's suspicious behavior, and the strange carton in the pantry kept replaying in my mind. I knew in my gut that it wasn't just an innocent coincidence. Sarah was lying. Even though James hadn't said much, the look in his eyes told me he was starting to believe it too. The following days were tense. Sarah's calls to James became relentless, alternating between tearful pleas and angry accusations. I could see how conflicted he was. Each conversation drained him, but he couldn't bring himself to block her entirely. Meanwhile, I felt trapped, knowing something had to be done but lacking the proof to confront her fully. Then, a week later, while tidying up the kitchen, I noticed something tucked behind the cereal boxes. My heart skipped a beat as I pulled out a small carton. It wasn't our usual oat milk, and the partially torn label revealed it wasn't milk at all. It was a liquid supplement with ingredients I didn't recognize. My hands trembled as I turned it over, trying to make sense of it. "James," I called, my voice shaking. He rushed in, concern etched across his face. "What is it?" I held up the carton.
this.
"She brought this into our house." He took it from me, frowning as he examined it. "What is this?" "I don't know," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "But it's not oat milk. And it's not something we would have bought." The realization hit James like a freight train. His expression darkened as he stared at the carton. "You think this is what she put in the tea?" "I'm almost certain," I said. "We need to find out what it is." Determined to get answers, we took the carton to a local lab for testing. The waiting felt endless, but when the results came back a few days later, they confirmed our worst fears. The liquid contained a substance that wasn't immediately deadly but could cause severe harm in significant quantities, especially to someone pregnant or with a weakened immune system. I sat in stunned silence, staring at the report in my hands. "She did this," I whispered. "She tried to hurt me. And the baby?" James was quiet for a long moment before he spoke, his voice low and filled with anger. "I can't believe this. My own mother." I reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. "She's not the person you thought she was, James. I'm so sorry. But we need to act now, before she does something worse." Confronting Sarah wasn't something I wanted to do alone, and thankfully, James agreed. We reached out to John. Knowing his history with Sarah gave him valuable perspective. He agreed to join us, bringing Emma along for support. The four of us sat waiting in the living room when Sarah arrived. Her surprise at seeing John and Emma was evident, but she quickly masked it with her usual confidence. "What's going on?" she asked, her eyes darting between us. "Sit down, Mom," James said, his voice steady but firm. "We need to talk." She hesitated before taking a seat, her posture defensive. I sat across from her, clutching the lab report tightly. My heart pounded as James began. "We found this," he said, holding up the carton. "It was in our pantry. The lab tested it. Do you want to explain why you brought it into our home?" Sarah's face paled, but she quickly recovered, feigning ignorance. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me, Mom," James said, his voice rising. "We know what it is. We know what it could have done." For a brief moment, her facade cracked. Panic flashed across her face, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. She straightened her shoulders and said, "I was trying to protect you." Her voice trembled with indignation. "Emily is changing you, James. She's taking you away from me. I had to do something." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Anger surged through me as I leaned forward. "You are willing to hurt your own grandchild to protect him? Do you even hear yourself?" Sarah's tears began to flow, but they felt rehearsed. She turned to James, her voice breaking. "I did it for you. Don't you see that? She's manipulating you, just like Emma manipulated John." John shot to his feet, his face red with anger. "That's enough, Mom. You've been doing this for years, and we're done letting you control us." James's expression was a mixture of heartbreak and fury as he stood. "You've crossed a line, Mom. I can't forgive this. I won't." Sarah's sobs grew louder, but they didn't sway him. He reached for my hand, and together, we left the room. As the door closed behind us, I felt a wave of relief. It wasn't over yet, but it was a start. We had taken the first step toward protecting our family and reclaiming our peace. Later that evening, James sat on the couch, staring blankly at the wall. Max lay at his feet, a quiet reminder of what we'd almost lost. I joined him, resting a hand on his shoulder. "Talk to me," I urged softly. He sighed deeply, his voice thick with emotion. "How did it come to this, Em? She's my mom. She raised me. How could she?" "I know this isn't easy," I said gently. "But what she did, there's no excuse for it. She put her child at risk. And Max. She crossed a line, and we can't let her back in." James turned to me, his expression filled with guilt. "I feel like I failed. I let her treat you this way for so long because I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to believe it." I cupped his face in my hands, forcing him to meet my eyes. "You didn't fail, James. You saw the truth when it mattered most. And now, we take the steps to make sure she can't hurt us again." The first thing we did was change the locks on the house. By the afternoon, I finally felt a sense of security, knowing Sarah no longer had access to our home. We also blocked her number and informed close family and friends about what had happened. John and Emma were fully supportive, though they warned us about Sarah's potential retaliation. "She'll try to manipulate everyone she can," John said during a call. "She'll twist the story to make herself the victim. Be ready for that." James sighed. "She's been doing that my whole life, hasn't she? I just didn't see it." John's tone softened. "We both wanted to believe the best about her. But at some point you have to protect the people who matter most." James thanked him, though I could see the mix of gratitude and regret on his face. There was no undoing the past, but I hoped he understood we were moving forward, together. As the days passed, Sarah's attempts to reconnect with us became more desperate. Word trickled down through family members that she was spinning a new story, claiming she was the victim of misunderstandings and unfair treatment. But this time, her words carried little weight. Everyone now knew the truth. To my relief, most of the family sided with James and me. Even John, who had distanced himself from Sarah years ago, remained resolute. "She's only doing this because she's lost her grip on us," he told James during a phone call. "Don't let her guilt you into letting her back in." James agreed, though I could see how hard it was for him. Guilt had been a constant presence in his life, ingrained by Sarah over the years. Still, he reminded himself of the danger she had posed, not just to me, but to our unborn child. The final test of our resolve came one crisp autumn afternoon. I was 8 months pregnant, and we'd spent the day running errands and picking up last-minute baby supplies. As we pulled into the driveway, My stomach dropped at the sight of a figure sitting on our porch. It was Sarah. James parked the car and immediately turned to me. "Stay here," he said, his jaw tightening. "I'll handle this." I nodded, though my heart was pounding. Watching him step out of the car and approach her filled me with both dread and relief. This was his moment to draw the line. "James," Sarah said, her voice trembling as she stood. She looked thinner, her hair unkempt. For a moment, she almost seemed fragile. "I just wanted to talk. Please." "There's nothing to talk about, Mom," James replied, his tone cold but steady. "You're not welcome here." "James, I've changed," she pleaded, her eyes filling with tears. "I know I made mistakes, but I've been working on myself. I want to make things right." James crossed his arms, unmoved. "Working on yourself doesn't undo what you did. You put Emily and our baby in danger, and that's something I'll never forgive." Her tears dried as quickly as they had appeared, replaced by a hardened expression. "She's poisoned you against me, hasn't she? That girl has ruined our family." "Stop," James snapped, his voice rising. "This isn't about Emily. This is about you and the choices you made. You need to leave." But Sarah didn't budge. "James, I'm your mother. You can't just cut me out of your life. Family doesn't do that to each other." James shook his head, his voice resolute. "Family protects each other. Family doesn't manipulate, control, or hurt. You need to leave, Mom. Now." Realizing she wasn't getting through to him, Sarah turned her gaze toward the car. I could feel her eyes on me even from the distance. She took a step toward the driveway, but James quickly stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Don't," he warned, his voice low and firm. For a moment, Sarah looked at him with a mix of anger and sadness. Then, with a defeated slump of her shoulders, she muttered, "You're going to regret this," before turning and walking away. James stood there, watching until she was out of sight. When he finally returned to the car, I reached for his hand as he slid into the driver's seat. "Are you okay?" I asked softly. He nodded, though his face was somber. "I am. For the first time, I think I really am." The weeks that followed were quiet, and for the first time in years, we felt a sense of peace. Sarah didn't make any further attempts to contact us, and we threw ourselves into preparing for the baby's arrival. We finalized the nursery, attended parenting classes, and leaned on each other in ways we never had before. When our daughter Lily was born, it was the happiest moment of our lives. Holding her tiny, perfect form in my arms filled me with a love I had never known. James sat beside me, his eyes shining with tears as he kissed her forehead. Max, ever our loyal companion, wagged his tail excitedly whenever he was near her, as though he understood how special she was. Life as new parents brought its own challenges, but it also brought clarity. James and I made a promise to each other that we would create a safe, loving environment for Lily, one free from the toxicity that had once loomed over our lives. This was our chance to build something new, and we weren't going to waste it. Months later, we heard through family that Sarah had moved out of town. Rumors swirled that she was struggling financially and had taken a job at a superstore to make ends meet. The news saddened James, but he felt no urge to reach out. For him, it was a stark reminder of the consequences of her actions. As for me, I felt closure. I had tried to build a bridge with Sarah, but there came a point when I realized that some relationships were beyond repair. My focus now is on the family James and I were building together, a family rooted in trust, respect, and love. One evening, as we sat on the couch with Lily sleeping soundly in her crib, James reached for my hand. His expression was tender, his voice thick with emotion as he said, "Thank you for everything, for standing by me when I didn't deserve it, for being the best partner and mother I could ever ask for." Tears pricked my eyes as I smiled at him. "We've been through a lot, James, but we made it through together. That's what matters." Max rested his head on my lap, his tail thumping gently against the floor. The soft sound of Lily's breathing filled the room, a comforting reminder of how far we'd come. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt truly at peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew we could face them together. I never thought a regular Thursday brunch would turn into the day I found out about my husband's betrayal. But there I was, frozen in the hallway, listening to him and his parents plot to get their hands on my family's money. My name is Sydney, and until that moment, I thought my life was under control. I'm a music teacher, married to Luke, who I thought was the love of my life, and a mother to our amazing 4-year-old daughter, Kate. My parents built a good life through hard work, and I've always been proud to follow their example of being independent. She just needs the right push, Luke said in the living room, his voice calm and smooth, the way he sounds when he's making a sales pitch. If we can get her to quit teaching, she'll have to rely more on her parents' support. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart pounding. Kate was upstairs napping, and I had just checked on her when I heard them talking. "Darling, you're being too subtle," said my mother-in-law, Anna, her voice sweet but filled with malice. "That salon chain her mother owns is worth millions. Sydney needs to realize her little music teaching job is beneath her potential." Beneath her potential? I mouthed silently, my hands clenching into fists. "It's not that simple," Luke sighed. "Sydney is stubborn about her independence. She gets that from her father." "Well, her father's not getting any younger," my father-in-law, James, added. "And neither is her mother. Have you looked into their estate planning?" I felt sick to my stomach. Their voices blurred as blood rushed to my ears. For 4 years, I thought I knew Luke. But here he was, talking about me like I was some problem to solve or resource to exploit. The worst part? They spoke about my parents' money as if my mom and dad were already gone. My mom still works long hours at her salons because she loves it, and my dad spends his days tinkering with tech projects in his home office. They are both full of life, not the fragile people Luke and his parents made them out to be. I must have made a noise, because the conversation in the living room abruptly stopped. Taking a deep breath, I straightened my shoulders, put on my best teacher smile, and stepped into the room. When I walked into the room, I used the same tone I use when I catch students passing notes in class. "Hey everyone," I said, proud that my voice sounded calm. "Having a nice chat?" Luke's face shifted, first guilt, then concern, before he put on his usual charming smile. "Hey, babe. We were just talking about your career." "Oh." I picked up my coffee mug from the side table, trying to keep my hands busy. "Anything interesting?" Anna jumped in, her perfectly manicured nails and fake concern on full display. "Darling, we were just discussing how many more opportunities you could have if you weren't tied down to teaching with your family's resources, of course." "My family's resources," I interrupted, taking a slow sip of my now cold coffee, "are exactly that, my family's." The room went silent. Luke shifted uncomfortably in his seat, the familiar crease forming between his eyebrows, the one that always appeared when something wasn't going his way. "Sydney," he started, but I cut him off with a sharp look. "I think I need some air," I said, setting my mug down carefully, even though my hands were trembling. "Would you mind watching Kate for a bit? I just need to clear my head." I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. As I passed the hallway mirror, I caught a glimpse of my reflection. I looked the same as I had that morning, but everything had changed. The woman staring back at me now knew her marriage might be built on lies, and she was already figuring out what to do about it. 2 weeks later, I found myself sitting at my parents' dining table, watching my mom arrange flowers as if everything in the world was still fine. I hadn't told them what I'd overheard yet. How do you tell your parents that their son-in-law sees them as nothing more than a walking investment plan? "You're quieter than usual," Mom said, trimming a flower stem with her usual steady hands. "Is everything okay with Kate?" "Kate's perfect," I replied, managing a small smile. "She's with Luke at his parents' house." Mom's hands paused for a moment. Anna and James," she said, her tone cool. The way she said their names told me everything. I needed to hear my mom's thoughts about my in-laws. I should have trusted her instincts 4 years ago. "They're hosting a dinner tonight," I said, tracing the wood grain of the table with my finger. "Something about a new business venture." Dad looked up from his tablet, his engineer's mind already working. "What kind of ventures?" "I'm not sure yet, but they specifically asked for you and Mom to join us." Did they now? Mom's voice had a sharp edge, the same tone she used when dealing with difficult suppliers for her salon chain. How interesting. Before I could say more, the doorbell rang. My stomach sank when I saw Luke through the window, arriving early with his parents.
Kate wasn't with them.
Where's Kate? I asked as they walked in. The nanny's watching her, Luke said smoothly, kissing my cheek. We thought it'd be better to discuss business without distractions. I caught the look that passed between my parents. They had always supported my choice to keep teaching after Kate was born, unlike Anna, who called it playing at having a career. Dinner turned into a masterclass in passive-aggressive behavior. Anna complimented my mom's cooking but hinted that she must be too busy with her little salons to cook often. James kept steering the conversation toward retirement planning, while Luke wore his salesman's smile, watching everyone like he was waiting for the right moment to make his pitch. So, Luke said finally, setting down his wine glass. We wanted to talk about an exciting opportunity. Here it comes, I thought. There's this incredible property development project, he continued, in a prime location. Guaranteed returns. But we need initial investors. Dad's expression stayed neutral, but I noticed his hand tighten around his fork. And you're bringing this to us because family should help family, Anna cut in with her overly sweet tone. With your resources, it would be a shame not to. Our resources, my mom said, cutting her off, are already committed to expanding the salon chain. We're opening 3 new locations next month. I saw Luke's face fall slightly before he quickly recovered. Surely some diversification would be wise, Ariane, he said. Your business is doing well, but property development could offer much better returns. Better returns than the business I built from nothing? Mom's voice was cold, sharp enough to cut through the room. The business that paid for Sydney's college without a single dollar of debt. That's not what Luke meant, Anna said quickly, her voice sugary sweet. We just think. I know exactly what you think, I interrupted, surprising even myself with how calm I sounded. You think my parents' money is your safety net. You think my mother's business is just a stepping stone to something better. You think I should quit my job and let my husband take over the finances. The room went silent. Luke stared at me, his charm fading to reveal something colder, darker underneath. Have you been eavesdropping on private conversations? He asked, his voice low. Private conversations about my family's money? I stood, the sound of my chair scraping against the floor breaking the tense quiet. Yes, I heard everything last Thursday. And I've been watching you ever since, waiting to see if you'd come clean. But instead, you brought your parents here to pitch this scheme. Sydney, Luke started, but my father cut him off. I think it's time for all of you to leave, Dad said quietly. His calm voice carried more weight than any loud argument. Luke lingered in the doorway after his parents stepped outside. We'll talk about this at home. No, we won't, I replied firmly. Because I'm staying here tonight with my daughter. You can't just. I shut the door before he could finish. After they left, I sat on the couch between my parents, feeling like a little girl again. But this time, the monster wasn't under my bed. It was the man who wore my wedding ring. I'm so sorry, I whispered. Mom squeezed my hand gently. Don't be sorry. Be smart. In that moment, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I never expected to become a detective in my own marriage, but there I was, sitting in the dark at midnight, scrolling through Luke's laptop while he slept upstairs. The house was silent except for the soft hum of the heater and the pounding of my heart. What started as a gut feeling had led me here. His password was still Kate's birthday, a detail that should have been sweet but now felt like another calculated move. My hands trembled as I opened folder after folder, each one unraveling a story I didn't want to read. Oh, God, I whispered, staring at a bank statement. The numbers didn't lie. Luke had been bleeding money for months, failed investments, secret credit cards, hidden loans. Piece by piece, the truth came together, and I wished I hadn't started looking at all. I never knew the full extent of Luke's schemes until I saw an email thread with his parents. They were discussing ways to access my mom's business accounts. The sight of it made my stomach turn. The floor creaked behind me. Find what you're looking for? Luke's voice startled me. I spun around to see him standing in the doorway, half hidden in the shadows. He didn't look angry. Worse, he looked calculating. "How long have you been planning to steal from my mom's business?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, even though my hands were shaking. "Steal is such an ugly word," he said, stepping into the room and running a hand through his messy hair. "I'd call it redistributing family resources." "Family resources?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean the business my mom built from nothing? The one she worked 21-hour days for? The one that could save us?" He slammed his hand on the desk, making me jump. "Do you know what it's like living in the shadow of your family's success? Having everyone compare me to your dad." "So this is about your ego?" I asked sharply. "This is about survival," he snapped, leaning closer. His charm was gone, replaced by something colder. "I'm drowning here, Sydney. The property development deal fell apart. I owe people money." "How much?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "More than you want to know," he said bitterly. I stood up slowly, putting some distance between us. "And you thought the solution was to steal from my mom?" "I thought the solution was to use available resources." "Stop." I cut him off, holding up my hand. "Just stop. For once, no sales pitch. Be honest." Something in his expression cracked, his mask slipping for a moment.
Fine.
"You want honesty? I'm broke. Everything I built is gone." "And your parents?" "They're sitting on a fortune while I'm drowning." "They worked for that fortune," I said firmly. "And I worked too," he yelled, his voice rising enough to make me glance at the ceiling, worried about waking Kate. "But nothing I do is ever enough. Not for them. Not for my parents. Not for you. Don't you dare make this about me," I hissed, stepping closer. "I loved you. I supported you. I never once asked you about money." "Exactly," he said with a bitter laugh. "You never had to ask about money. You've always had it as a safety net. Must be nice." I turned back to the laptop, opening my email and forwarding everything I'd found to myself. Luke watched me, his jaw tightening. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Protecting my family," I said, meeting his eyes. "You have 14 hours to tell my parents everything, or I will. And trust me, you'd rather it come from you?" "You're bluffing," he said, narrowing his eyes. "Try me." I grabbed my phone and headed for the stairs. "I'm getting Kate." He caught my arm. "It's the middle of the night. Let go of me," I said, my voice cold. "Or the first call I make won't be to my parents. It'll be to the police." His hand dropped. I packed a bag for Kate while Luke paced downstairs, making hushed, angry phone calls. I knew he was talking to his parents, probably trying to figure out how to control the situation. Let them try. 30 minutes later, I was strapping a sleepy Kate into her car seat. Luke stood in the doorway, watching us. "This isn't over," he said. "You're right," I replied, starting the car. "It's just beginning." As I drove through the quiet, dark streets toward my parents' house, Kate dozed in the back seat. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. So innocent, so unaware of how her world was about to change. My grip on the steering wheel tightened as my determination grew. Luke was right about one thing. This wasn't over. But he had no idea what I was prepared to do next. They say bad news comes in threes. I never imagined all three would hit me in a single day. The first blow came at dawn. My lawyer called to tell me Luke had already taken half the money from our savings account. It was legal since the account was in both our names, but it was a crushing blow nonetheless. I sat in my parents' guest room, staring at my phone, my hands shaking as Kate slept peacefully beside me. The second hit came at noon. Mom collapsed at one of her salons. "A stroke," the doctor explained in a cold, sterile hospital hallway. "She's stable, but the next 72 hours are critical." I stood there, numb, as Dad gripped my hand tightly. Everything looked harsh and unreal under the fluorescent lights, like a nightmare I couldn't escape. The third came just before midnight, a text from an unknown number. "Thought you should see this." Attached was a photo of Luke leaving a hotel with Anna, carrying what looked like documents. The timestamp showed it had been taken just hours after Kate and I left the house. I was still staring at the message when Dad returned from the coffee machine. "The vultures are already circling," he said quietly, handing me a cup. "Luke's been calling the salon managers, trying to get financial information." "How did you find out?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Amber called," he said, sitting heavily in the plastic chair next to me. "She's worked with your mom for 16 years. She knows something's wrong." I nodded, unable to speak. Through the window into Mom's room, I saw her lying there, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. The woman who taught me to be strong and independent couldn't even breathe on her own. "Dad," I started, but my voice broke. "I know," he said softly, pulling out his tablet. "Let's get to work." "I recognize this from Amber's office," Dad said, his fingers flying over his tablet screen. "Your mother and I have been expecting something like this. Not exactly this, but we knew it was a possibility." "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. "We've seen the way Luke and his parents look at what we've built, like it's their backup plan." He entered a password and continued, "Your mother made some changes last month. She transferred majority control of the salons to you." The coffee cup nearly slipped from my hand. "She did what?" "She said she had a feeling," Dad said with a sad smile. "She always had good instincts about people." A commotion at the nurse's station made us both look up. Luke was there, arguing with security. Anna stood behind him, looking polished and predatory as always. "Sir, only family is allowed," the guard said firmly. "I am family," Luke snapped, his voice echoing down the hall. "That's my mother-in-law in there." I stood up without thinking, my body moving before my mind could catch up. Dad grabbed my arm. "Let security handle it." "No," I said, handing him my coffee. "I need to end this now." Luke spotted me and immediately turned on his fake concern. "Sydney, baby, I've been so worried." "Save it," I interrupted, stopping just out of his reach. I saw the hotel photos. His face flickered with surprise, then hardened into indignation. "You're having me followed?" "Apparently someone else is," I replied, glancing at Anna. She looked uncomfortable for the first time. "What documents were you reviewing with your mother at the Grand Hotel?" "That's private business," he said stiffly. "Nothing about my family's business is private to you anymore," I said, stepping closer and lowering my voice. "You have one chance to walk away with your dignity. Leave now, or I'll send everything I found on your laptop to every investor you've ever worked with." Anna grabbed his arm. "Luke, let's go." But he shook her off, his mask cracking. "You think you can threaten me? I know things about your father's tech patents."
About
what?" Dad's calm, steady voice cut through the tension as he stepped up beside me. "Please, Luke, enlighten us about my business. I'm very interested to hear what you think you know." The security guard stepped closer. "Sir, I'm going to need you to leave." For a moment, I thought Luke might argue, or even lash out. But then his shoulders slumped, and I saw him for what he truly was, a scared little boy, drowning in lies, pretending to be a businessman. "This isn't over," he muttered, but the threat sounded weak, hollow. "Actually it is," I replied, turning back toward Mom's room. "My lawyer will contact you tomorrow." As security escorted them out, I heard Anna hissing at Luke, but I didn't bother listening. I had more important things to focus on, like protecting what my mom had worked so hard to build, like being the daughter she always believed I could be, and like making sure the people who tried to tear my family apart never got another chance. The salon mirrors reflected my mom's empty office chair as I sifted through the chaos Luke had left behind. Just 4 days after her stroke, and I was already finding holes in the business accounts, small ones at first, then bigger ones. It was like a trail of breadcrumbs leading to something much worse. "Miss Sydney," Amber, our head stylist, said, appearing in the doorway. "They're here again." I didn't need to ask who they were. Through the glass walls, I could see Anna and James sitting in the waiting area. They were dressed like they were heading to a board meeting, not a beauty salon. "Send them in," I said, keeping my eyes on the computer screen. I let them wait while I finished reviewing another suspicious transaction. "Sydney, darling," Anna greeted, her strong perfume reaching me before she did. "We've been trying to get in touch with you." I've been busy discovering what your son did to my mom's business, I said without looking up. Then I finally met her gaze. Would you like to explain these transfer authorizations? The ones with your signature on them? James shifted in his seat, looking uneasy. Now, Sydney, business is complicated. Theft usually is, I interrupted, turning the screen toward them. Did you think no one would notice? That my mom would just brush it off as a family favor? Your mother understood the importance of family, Anna said sharply. Unlike you, it seems. I laughed, but it sounded hollow even to me. Family? Is that what you're calling embezzlement these days? We prefer to think of it as a temporary reallocation, James said, pulling out a folder. Actually, we have a proposal that could solve everyone's problems. The only problem I have, I said, glaring at them, is sitting right in front of me. Anna leaned forward, her expensive bracelet catching the light. Your mom is in the hospital, Sydney. The business needs strong leadership. Luke has experience stealing from it, I snapped, standing up so quickly that my chair rolled back. And now I know you helped him. Be reasonable, James said, trying to sound calm. We can make this all go away. Sign over controlling interest to Luke, and we'll forget about pressing charges for the irregularities we found in your father's tech patents. My blood went cold. What irregularities? Anna smiled, her teeth gleaming like a predator's. Let's just say Luke did his homework. It would be such a shame if the patent office received an anonymous tip about your father's early development processes. The pieces clicked into place. Luke's late nights, his sudden interest in Dad's old projects. They'd been planning this for months. Get out, I said, my voice steady despite the anger boiling inside me. Think about Kate, Anna said, her voice dripping with fake concern. Think about her future. Imagine what a messy legal battle would do to her. Something inside me snapped. I picked up my mom's heavy glass paperweight, turning it over in my hands. You know what my mom told me about building her business? She said sometimes you have to break things to make them stronger. I brought the paperweight down hard on the corner of the desk, cracking the glass surface. Both Anna and James jumped. That was your first warning, I said, setting the paperweight down gently. Here's your second. I have copies of everything, every transfer, every forged signature, every so-called reallocation. One phone call, and it all goes to the FBI. You wouldn't, James stammered. Think about Luke, Anna added. I am thinking about Luke, I said coldly. I'm thinking about how good he'll look in orange. I walked to the door and held it open. You have 26 hours to return every penny, or I start making calls. And if you ever mention my daughter again, the only way you'll see her is through the glass in a prison visiting room. They scurried out like rats. Moments later, Amber appeared in the doorway with a cup of tea. Your mom would be proud, she said softly. I looked down at the cracked desk, thinking of my mom lying in her hospital bed, my dad poring over old patents, and Kate asking why she couldn't go home. No, I said, picking up my phone. Not yet. But she will be. I dialed my lawyer's number, watching Anna and James hurry to their car through the salon's windows. They thought they could use my family against me? Fine. It was time to show them exactly what kind of woman my mom had raised. It was time to make them regret ever hearing the name Sydney. The divorce papers sat untouched on Luke's desk as he paced his office like a trapped animal. I had chosen my timing carefully, after hours, when his staff had left, but before he could slip away to whatever hotel he was hiding at these days. You can't be serious, he said, picking up the papers and then dropping them like they were on fire. After everything we've built. You mean after everything you've stolen, I said, staying on my feet and keeping the desk between us. The salon accounts, my dad's patents, our savings. I was trying to save us, he shouted, slamming his hands on the desk. Your parents have been holding us back, controlling everything with their money. The only one trying to control anything is you, I said, shoving the papers closer to him. Sign them. He let out a harsh laugh, the sound making me flinch. Or what? You'll run to Daddy? Have him sue me? Go ahead. I'll drag every skeleton out of his closet, every shortcut he took building his precious tech empire. You're bluffing, I said. Am I? Luke shot back, pulling out his phone and showing me documents. "I'd never seen those before," I said, my voice trembling. "Your father wasn't as clean as you think," Luke said smugly. "Want to know how many corners he cut? How many people he stepped on?" My hands started to shake. "Those are fake. The patent office won't think so," he said, his smile turning cruel. "Neither will his investors. One anonymous tip, and everything comes crashing down. You destroy him just to hurt me?" "I destroy him to protect what's mine," Luke snapped, stepping closer. "Including you." I backed away, bumping into the wall. "I was never yours to own." "No." He moved even closer. "Then why did you marry me? Because you loved me? Or because your parents approved of my pedigree, my connections?" "Stop it," I said firmly. "Face it, Sydney. You're just like me, playing the game, using people." "I'm nothing like you," I hissed. "Really?" He grabbed my wrist as I tried to walk past him. "Then why are you here alone? Why didn't you bring your lawyer?" "Because you thought you could manipulate me, just like your mother taught you." I yanked my arm free. "Don't talk about my mother." "Poor Ariane," he said mockingly. "All those years building her empire, and now she can't even speak to defend it. How long before the board pushes you out? A month? A week?" Something inside me snapped. I grabbed the nearest object, a crystal award from his desk, and hurled it at the wall. The crash was loud, and the way he jumped was deeply satisfying. "You want to talk about manipulation?" I shouted, my voice shaking with anger. "Let's talk about how you and your parents planned this from the start. How you married me for my family's money. How you—" The office door opened, and Anna walked in, perfectly composed despite the chaos. "I thought I heard voices," she said smoothly, glancing at the shattered crystal. "Having a disagreement? Get out." I spat. "I'm afraid I can't do that," she said, holding up her phone. "Not when I have such interesting security footage of you assaulting my son." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "Throwing things. Threatening him," she said, clicking her tongue like I was a misbehaving child. Not very maternal behavior. I wonder what a judge would think about Kate's safety with such an unstable mother. The room spun. They'd planned this too, the confrontation, the security footage, everything. "You wouldn't dare use my daughter against me," I said, my voice cracking. "Try us," Luke said, his tone soft but dangerous. "Sign over your controlling interest in the salons, and we'll forget this happened. Fight us, and you'll lose everything. Your business, your father's reputation, and Kate." I looked at them, mother and son, so alike in their cold, calculated cruelty. All my careful plans, all the evidence I had of their theft, felt worthless if they could make me look unstable and dangerous. "I'll give you 26 hours to decide," Anna said, like she was doing me a favor. "Choose wisely." They left me there, surrounded by shattered crystal and broken dreams. My phone buzzed, a text from Dad about Mom's worsening condition, another from my lawyer warning me about Luke's countersuit. I slid down the wall, the divorce papers scattered around me like fallen leaves. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt completely lost. But one thing was clear: I couldn't let them win, not for me, but for Kate, for Mom, and for everything my family had built. I just had to figure out how. The moment I stepped into Luke's parents' house, I knew something was wrong. The place was too quiet, too still, like a trap waiting to spring. I found them in the study, Luke, Anna, and James seated behind the massive oak desk like judges at a trial. A laptop sat in front of them, silently playing the security footage from Luke's office. "Where's Kate?" I asked, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was racing. "She's safe," Anna said smoothly. "With the nanny. We thought it best to handle this professionally." "Funny," I said, setting my own laptop on the desk. "I was thinking the same thing." Luke's smirk faltered when I opened it, revealing a video chat window. Amber's face appeared, alongside my dad's lawyer, and most surprising of all, James's former business partner, David. "Hello, James," David said, his voice crackling through the speakers. "Been a while." James's face went pale. What is this? This, I said, pulling out a USB drive, is everything. The real records from the salon accounts. My dad's original patent documentation. And something very interesting from David about some creative accounting you and Luke did at your old firm. Anna shot up from her chair. You're bluffing? Like you were bluffing about that security footage? I replied, pulling out my phone. I played a recording I'd made during the confrontation at Luke's office, capturing their entire setup. Amazing what modern phones can do, isn't it? Luke lunged for my laptop, but I stepped back, snapping it shut.
Don't bother.
It's all backed up. And if anything happens to me or Kate, it goes straight to the FBI. You destroy your own families? Luke's voice cracked. Your daughter's future? No, Luke, I said calmly. I'm saving it from you. We can still work this out, Anna said quickly, holding up her hands in a pleading gesture. We're family. Family? I laughed bitterly. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't use a 4-year-old as leverage. Family doesn't. Oh, spare us the moral high ground, Luke snapped. You're just like us, using whatever advantage you can get. The difference, I said, meeting his eyes, is that I'm not doing this for money. I turned to David. Show them. David shared his screen, displaying financial records that made James gasp audibly. This is what they really took from your mom's business, David said, scrolling through the evidence. And this, he added, pulling up more documents, is what they were planning to do next. The room went silent, except for the hum of the laptop fans. I watched their faces as they realized just how completely I had outmaneuvered them. Here's what's going to happen, I said, pulling out a stack of papers. You're going to sign these. All of you. Full confession of the theft, immediate repayment of everything you took, and a legally binding agreement to stay away from my family's businesses forever. And if we refuse? Anna asked, her voice trembling slightly. Then David sends everything to the SEC, I said. I'm sure they'd love to hear about James's creative accounting methods. And as for Luke, I turned to him, locking eyes. Those investors you scammed? They're eager to have a chat with the FBI. Luke slumped in his chair, the fight draining out of him. You've been planning this all along. I learned from the best, I said, sliding the papers closer to them. You taught me how to play the long game, remembers? One by one they signed. Even Anna, though her hand shook with barely controlled rage. David and my dad's lawyer witnessed the signatures virtually. I didn't feel triumph, just exhaustion. One more thing, I said, pulling out another set of papers. The divorce papers. Full custody of Kate. Non-negotiable. Luke stared at the papers for a long moment. Can I still see hers? Supervised visits, I said firmly, if you get help. Real help, not playing the victim. He nodded and signed without another word. As I packed up my laptop, James finally spoke. What happens now? I paused at the door. Now, you get to find out what it's like to build something honest for once. To earn what you have. I looked at each of them in turn. Consider it a gift, more than you gave my family. I left them there, surrounded by the ruins of their schemes, and went to collect my daughter. It wasn't the revenge I'd once wanted, but it was something better. Justice, with a chance for redemption. Mom would have approved. 7 months later, I stood in my mom's newly renovated office, watching the sunset paint the salon windows gold. The familiar sounds of hair dryers and quiet conversations filled the air, a symphony my mom had conducted for decades. Ms. Sidney's? Amber appeared in the doorway. Your 5:30 is here. I checked my watch, surprised. Send him in. Luke walked in looking different. He was thinner, less polished. The designer suits were gone, replaced by a simple button-down shirt and jeans. He carried a thick folder, and something else. I couldn't quite see what he was holding. Thanks for meeting me, he said, standing in the doorway like a stranger, which I supposed he now was. Kate's excited about the zoo tomorrow, I said, keeping my tone neutral. The supervised visits had been going better than I'd expected. He nodded and placed a folder on my desk. I've been researching small business loans, especially for salon expansions. There's a program that might help with the 3 new locations you're planning. I stared at him. Why? Because I owe you more than just money, he said, shifting uncomfortably. I've been working with a financial advisor, helping people avoid the mistakes I made. It's good work, honest work. He hesitated. Your parents haven't spoken to my parents since the divorce. They're in Florida now, trying to rebuild with what they have left. He paused again, then added, I'm not asking for forgiveness, Sydney. Just a chance to do something right for once. I opened the folder and skimmed through the documents. The research was thorough, professional, and exactly what the business needed. Why now? I asked. Because Kate asked me something during our last visit. He pulled out the item he'd been holding, a framed photo of Mom cutting the ribbon at her first salon opening. She wanted to know if her grandmother was a superhero because of how you talk about her. My throat tightened. What did you tell her?
I told her the truth, he said.
That her grandmother built something amazing, and that her mother is even stronger for protecting it. He set the photo on my desk. I found this in my parents' storage. I thought it belonged here. I picked up the photo, the memory of that day flooding back. I'd been 12, watching Mom beam with pride as she opened her first salon, a dream she built from nothing, just like I was doing now. The loan program, I said finally. Is it legitimate? Completely. I'll send all the details to your lawyer first. No strings. No involvement for me unless you want it. I studied him carefully. This version of Luke was different, humbled, and somehow more real than the polished man I'd married. I'll think about it, I said. He turned to leave, then stopped. You know what the hardest part was? He asked. Realizing I already had everything I needed, a family, a home, love. I just couldn't see it because of my own look. And now, he paused, smiling sadly. Now I see clearly. Too late, but clearly. After he left, I sat at Mom's old desk, my desk now, and looked at the photo. The setting sun caught the glass, reflecting my face over hers. 2 different women. 2 different battles. The same determination. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Dad. Mom squeezed my hand today. Doctors say it's a good sign. I smiled, touching the frame gently. Maybe Luke wasn't the only one getting a second chance. Amber knocked softly on the door. The staff meeting's ready. We're discussing the expansion plans. Be right there, I said, standing up. I took one last look at the photo, then walked out to meet my team, ready for the next chapter. I stood tall, straightening my jacket. Actually, I have some new information to share, I said, holding up the folder. It's from Luke's proposal. Maybe it could work. But this time, we'll do it our way. The right way. As I walked into the conference room, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the salon mirrors. I wasn't just my mom's daughter anymore. I was my own person. Someone who could protect what mattered, while still making space for growth, for change, and even for redemption, even for those who might not deserve it. Because that's what real strength is. It's not just about knowing how to fight. It's about knowing when to rebuild. To create something new from the ashes of what was lost. And this was just the beginning.